Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the new moon solar eclipse in the third decan of Aquarius. Hope that you're having a wonderful afternoon out there. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the symbolism associated with the upcoming eclipse. We're going to take a look at the Aquarius symbolism. We're going to take a look at the square to Uranus, which is an important part of this lunation. We're going to talk about Saturn in Aries and the conjunction with Neptune as host. So buckle in. And if you are joining us, please let me know in the comments. We've got some beautiful folks stopping in. Cosmic Rose Water is here. What's up, Cosmic Rose? Nice to see you, friend. Hope that you're doing well. Ani is here. What's up, Ani? Well, thank you for stopping in. Let me know that you're here. Appreciate you. Stephen the Jupiterian says, hello, I am here tuning in from San Francisco, California. Nice to see you, Stephen. Hope everything's going well your way. Leanne is here. Says, hello, everyone joining from across the pond. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Okay. So thank you, friends, for stopping in. A few announcements before we get going. We've got Across the Hedge here. What's up, Kai? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well for you over in Kansas. A couple announcements. So we are, of course, talking new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. You can support the channel by signing up for a reading. You can go to the store over at spencermichaud.com and purchase a webinar. All of those things are great for supporting the channel and the work that I do here each week. You can find at the store the webinars associated with the decans that I talk about here today. I have a 12 decan webinar series where we talk about all 36 decans, the 10-degree divisions of the zodiac. I have a series with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, on Dignity and Devotion, which is a 7 traditional planet series where we talk about how to create an electional magical practice with the 7 traditional planets. And then, of course, there's Stars and Cards, which talks about the connection with tarot and astrology, which you can find at spencermichaud.com. Speaking of Tanya Andrews, you can find her at Third Coast Mojo. And there's all sorts of wonderful new things that are coming out into the world from Third Coast Mojo. We've got a new Get Lucky oil with Jupiter exalted in Cancer. It smells amazing. It's got a beautiful like vanilla lime kind of scent to it. I'm wearing it right now. It's probably my favorite scent that has come out of Third Coast Mojo. So go over and support Tanya over there. We also have a new Law Keep Away with Mercury in Virgo product that has come out. If you need a little bit of help, maybe steering clear from corrupt forces, there's also, Valentine's Day is coming up tomorrow. Venus and Pisces Come to Me oil is great for attracting love or things of that nature into your life. And then, of course, with Saturn moving into Aries, maybe a little Saturnine magic might be good for you as well. With Saturn and Aquarius in its own home domicile that can help you be a little bit more objective. It can help you see the big picture, even if it feels like we have to do everything now. Saturn and Aquarius can say, let's take a little bit of a breath. Let's take a mountaintop view of things. And it can help us with the patience that is needed to do things that require delayed gratification, right? That require showing up each day and doing all the little things that we need to do to create success in the long run. So go over and support Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. There's a link to her shop here in the description of this video or podcast. And thank you so much for all of you who have been supporting the channel in that regard. You can also sign up for our newsletter if you want to know when new products are launching, when there are live streams that are going live. If you want to know the song of the week, this week it was Jeff Buckley's The Sky is a Landfill, which is a great tune from the mid-90s and from his unreleased album, Sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk. It just kind of captured the essence, I think, of what's going on in the collective right now, to me. And so sign up for the newsletter. You can also support the channel today by purchasing a super chat while I am live or going to buymeacoffee.com and supporting the channel like that. Thank you so much for everyone who has participated in that and has been able to contribute. I've been doing a lot of research on gift economies and how to keep information flowing and getting from point A to point B. And the super chats and the buymeacoffee.com contributions go a long way towards me helping to keep doing this and functioning in the spirit of the gift. So thank you so much to everyone who has been able to contribute in that regard. If you aren't able to contribute in that means, the easiest thing that you can do is to like the video and subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, share it with your friends so that we can reach more people. So thank you so much for everyone who's been able to do so. All right, we got some more friends stopping in. Let's see. Let's see. Ani says, happy Saturn in Aries. Ugh. We're not quite there. We have a few more hours with Saturn in Pisces, but you can kind of feel it coming in. I shared on Instagram a little countdown, where it was a video of Europe, the band Europe, who was famous for the final countdown. And it was sort of one of those videos where they take the audio out and some comedian adds their own audio in. Just go check it out. It's in my stories right now, at Spencer Show on Instagram. It's hilarious. It feels like the transition to Saturn in Aries, where it's just like, some ridiculous kind of performance and yeah. So we'll see. We'll break all that down for you today, Ani. K-Wow is here. What's up? K-Wow says, hey, good afternoon, Spencer and chat. Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Thank you so much for coming each week. I always notice you in the chat and appreciate all of your wonderful insights. Cosmic Rose says, can keep away law help with burglars? That's interesting. Yeah, I think it is overall, it's a protection oil. I think that it is really good for hiding you from things that you don't want to be noticed for. Now, does it help with getting burglars, or like, does it help a burglar who is trying to break the law? I don't know. I mean, it depends on what the spirit is. I mean, if let's say you're kind of doing some corporate Robin Hoodism, right? Where maybe you're trying to steal from the rich and give to the poor. Maybe that's a good use for it. But I think mostly it's for, keeping yourself free from corrupt forces. We've been really dealing with a lot of challenges with forces that have been overreaching with their power and like with surveillance state types of things. And I think it can be really good for those kind of things. Mercury is known for being able to move between worlds very swiftly and very skillfully. And I think that can help us too, like move between worlds. I think Mercury also had one of those cloaks of invisibility as well. So if there's things that you're trying to do out in the world that you don't want to be noticed for, but your intentions are good, I think that it could be a really helpful one. K-Wow says, good morning to all of whom it applies. Yes. Ani says, scientific method is good. Should have been more patient for the new exalted Jupiter flavor. Well, there's save up, and there's all sorts of good stuff there at Third Coast Mojo, Ani. The Jupiter elections were really good. The Saturn ones are amazing, though. So I don't think you made a mistake by getting the scientific method. I think it's just that there's just new stuff that comes out all the time. And, maybe that was the right thing for you in that moment. And maybe there will be an opportunity in the future to get the right thing that'll speak to your heart. What's up, Sergey? What's up? How you doing, friend? Nice to see you here in the chat. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Corinne Schumann is joining us. Hello, Spencer and friends. Nice to see you, Corinne. Hope you're doing well as well. Cosmic Rosewater says, I think my Aquarius moon already feels it. Yeah, I think there's something in the air with the transition today with Saturn moving into Aries. There is that Aries energy bubbling up from the collective. Ani says, I was up all night. I can feel Saturn creeping in with the eclipse energy. It's not a good time for my ascendant ruler at 1 degrees Aries. Ooh, that's going to be a big shift, isn't it? Seeing the Saturn moving out of your 12th and into your 1st and conjoining your ascendant. Some big changes happening potentially. Sergey says, I'm looking forward to Saturn in Aries. Last summer when Saturn and Neptune played in Aries was pretty good for me. Likely because my Saturn in Pisces house damaged things. Yeah, I think that there's always a shift that happens, right? There's always a different way of that energy expressing in our charts. And that's a really good point, is for one person, it might be something that is very difficult and painful. For someone else, it might be a relief having Saturn move off of some of the things in our charts that might be creating a pain point. I know for me personally, Sergey, I have a ton of planets in Virgo. So I have Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn in Virgo. So Saturn moving out of an opposition with all those planets might be a relief potentially. It's also going to start squaring other stuff, but there's always going to be stuff like that, right? We always have to play the balancing game with all of that of how can we recognize there are going to be some positive things that we experience in our life, and there's going to be some challenging things that we have to work through. Ani says, I need that Mercury oil. Neptune in Aries is bringing me liars trying to abuse law enforcement against me. I'm already doing protection work, but could use a guide to keep the law on my side. Well, there you go. A perfect application for that. If someone is trying to exploit you through a corrupt law act, that could be a really great use for that oil. There's also a Just Judge oil that just got released too with, I believe that's a Jupiter in Cancer election. So if you have legal trouble where you need to sort of nudge things in your direction, that's a good one too. Yeah, hang in there, friend. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this, this eclipse. So today we're going to be talking about the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius 3. And it is going to be perfecting on the 17th. So let's share the chart here and see if we can get things rolling with this. Okay, so here is our chart. This is February 17th, 2026, Tuesday, 7:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The new moon on Tuesday, right? Can't use our Duran Duran song there, but we'll do our best. New moon on Tuesday. 28 degrees of Aquarius. So some big picture thoughts with this eclipse. This is a Rahu North Node eclipse. So Rahu was the Vedic or the Jyotisha name for a dragon or a demon that attempted successfully to consume an elixir of immortality. Another deity was like witnessing this and saying, hey, you know what? This is not really allowed, and severed the head of the snake or the dragon, but the demon didn't die because he had already consumed that elixir. So whenever we have a north node, and you can see this here with this little hula hoop thing that is looking like an arch, right? A little rainbow there. The upside down one is the south node. That's the opposite. That's called K2. Whenever we have a new moon or an eclipse associated with Rahu, we have themes associated with hunger, with wanting to consume new things, with increase, with desire. So this is a new moon where we're initiating something new, where we have a strong desire to increase the qualities of the eclipse, right? So in this case, we are bringing something into being that is new. We have a strong, almost insatiable desire for that. That's another part of this that we have to be clear upon. Because Rahu is a severed head, it doesn't have a body. We can't satiate that need or that desire completely. And I think it's important to understand that around eclipse season, because we may have things that seem really, really important that we want really, really bad. But there may not be any way to completely satiate that desire. The other quality that we have that is pretty important for this eclipse is the new moon solar eclipse is squared Uranus. You can see this here. So Uranus is at 27 degrees or so of Taurus, and it's pretty tight. It's separating here, but it's in a pretty tight square with Uranus. And that can bring an element of the unexpected into our eclipse season. Eclipse seasons are already sort of unexpected kind of events. Not really unexpected, but I would say that they are game-changing events. They are chapter markers. They are supercharged new and full moons. And adding Uranus into it brings an element of the unexpected. It brings an element of the lightning bolt of awareness that hopefully will liberate us from something that maybe has been holding us back. Maybe there's been a rut or a pattern that we've been stuck within, and Uranus as a planet that can help us to break out of those old patterns and old stories and old narratives, which I think is an important part of this eclipse. We will talk about the decan that both the eclipse and Uranus are in. I guess my only caution with this is, first of all, it's a square between the eclipse and Uranus. So it is the innovation that we may be seeking may come through a little bit more of a disruptive way than we had hoped. It could come through tension. Sometimes when we have a trine to Uranus, it's a flowing aspect where these new ideas come to us, and they're these beautiful flowers of ideas, and oh, it's very wonderful to pursue those and to smell the new fragrance that's coming. Here, it's like we get knocked over the head by like a hammer or something. It's like, oh shit, where did that come from? And it may knock something loose, but there could be a disorientating feeling to that, and we have to be aware of that. The other caution I have with Uranus playing a part in this lunation is coming to me through the study of Liz Green. Liz Green has a beautiful book called The Art of Stealing Fire. It's somewhere here on my desk next to me. I don't know if I can show you it in real time here, but it is a wonderful book that talks about some of the hubris that can be involved in Uranus types of, I don't know, experiences, where we are trying to be like the gods, right? We are trying to be godlike. And that can lead to attempting to harness forces that are very difficult for human beings to control indefinitely. And the first thing that's coming to mind is just in our modern times, like artificial intelligence. Like, for example, there is a possibility that it becomes a sentient type of technology that is difficult for human beings to control. There have been things in the past like this when we had new technologies that have been implemented, like, for example, in the Industrial Revolution, where we created all sorts of new ways of being efficient, but there were consequences to that sort of that got out of control. And I think that there are so many things like that in the world where we have good intentions, where we're trying to innovate, but it can take on a life of its own. So this eclipse has that element within it of potentially taking on a life of its own through Uranus here. We also have Mars and Pluto co-present with the eclipse. Okay, so this is a sort of a coloration here, with Mars being co-present and Pluto, two kind of challenging energies in the sky. Mars being a planet that likes to sever and separate, it can bring up frustrations, it can bring up our awareness of things we need to cut from our lives. Mars is in the second 10-degree section of Aquarius, which talks about moving from point A to point B. So as we are feeling the desire to move on from things that aren't working in our life, we may have some challenges getting from one shore to the next. I think that there's an important rebirth quality that's happening through this new moon eclipse. I think that there is some frustration that will come up with things that aren't working as we try to repair something in our life as well. But the Pluto aspect is bringing up things that maybe have been buried underneath the surface. Pluto is sort of like a volcanic energy that brings things up from the depths. And those things can be very destructive, like lava in the moment. But eventually that lava can cool, and new life can come from that cooled lava. This is how the Hawaiian Islands were built, right? Volcanic eruptions that basically, like, you know, destroyed everything that was in its path, but then from that destruction came fertility. So there is an element of that within this as well. There's two more things I think are big picture thoughts, and we'll go through all of them in greater detail in a second. But Venus is going to be conjoining the North Node during this. And now it's not making an aspect to the lunation itself, but I did think it was something to keep an eye on, because Venus is in its exaltation right now in Pisces, which means it's in a place where it is very well resourced to do some of the things that it wants to do, like harmonize, bring people together, help us to understand our narratives that we've been trying to create our reality through. And with it being very close to the North Node, our desires to harmonize a new mythology or to understand our old stories that are operating in the background, I think will be very, very strong. Sometimes with Venus in the first decan of Pisces, they talk about this in the 36 Faces, Austin Coppock's beautiful book. Sometimes there will be an awareness of the fleetingness of desire, the awareness of things that we may have to walk away from, right? With the 8 of Cups saying, well, we desired this in the past, but we might need to walk away from this now because it's no longer part of our current story of growth or of understanding, right? So I think that's a part of this as well that we should make sure we're breaking down. And then finally, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's going to be happening very, very shortly after this eclipse. Okay, about 3 days after the eclipse, we have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the first degree, or the 0 degree point of Aries. And not only is this very, very important aspect happening, but it's hosting the eclipse. In traditional astrology, they have what's called the guest-host relationship. And what it means is that these planets, all of these planets in Aquarius, are essentially deities that are visiting someone else's temple or land or place of residence. And in this case, they're visiting Saturn's residence, which is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. So what we have to understand is that Saturn wants to provide resources. Okay, when I say provide resources, what is really happening is providing topics to deal with, providing ways to achieve those planets' goals that are moving through that temple. Each planet has its own agenda, right? So like the sun and the moon, they have different agendas than Saturn. And in all honesty, the agenda of the sun can be very different and opposing from the agenda of Saturn. In the Thema Mundi, they were said to be opposite forces. So what is Saturn going to be providing, right? And who is providing for Saturn? There's this cool little thing happening in this arrangement right now called mutual reception. There's a mutual reception between Mars and Saturn. Saturn is in Mars's house of Aries, and Mars is in Saturn's house of Aquarius. So there is this kind of mutual desire for each other's benefit, right? So that's kind of neat. But we have to understand what Saturn's going to be providing, and we'll be talking about that in great detail as well. So those are sort of my overarching big picture thoughts. I'm going to go back to the chat here, and then we'll start breaking it down one by one. But I love the conversations that we have here, so I'm just kind of looking through chat here. I got to go back a little bit. Okay, Rose says the big chart was better to see. I get it. I apologize for those with poor vision. I do it the way that I do it so that I can chop it up and make it into smaller clips. So that's sort of the reason that I do it that way, but we'll see. We can see what works for everyone. Ani says that Cosmic Rose, luckily Mercury, thanks Cosmic Rose, luckily Mercury in Pisces is my wheelhouse, so they can't keep their lies straight and they are not succeeding, but the effort is stressful AF. Yeah, it is. It is stressful when we're dealing with undermining forces, right? When we have things in our life that throw us off our center, whether they are things that people can see visibly or things that we're dealing with behind the scenes, that can be really challenging. I think it takes a lot of patience and communication and ability to maybe take time out every once in a while and to refill the well. So yeah, I hope that whatever you're going through, Ani, gets resolved peacefully. Okay. Sergey says, first solar eclipse in opposition to my ascendant Mercury at early 29 degrees of Leo that I remember. Will be interesting to see if something happens in my marriage. Yeah, a lot of us with Leo risings are kind of looking at that and being like, what's going on here in our 7th houses? So there could be a new change within that potentially. I think that in relationships, relationships change over time. And a lot of the themes that we're talking about today are about making changes, leaping into the unknown. And I don't think that an eclipse necessarily in our 7th house means that our relationship is going to end, or that we have to leave our marriages, or whatever it might look like on the surface. It might mean, though, that there needs to be some changes, that there might be needing to be some different roles that we take on, that we might have to do things differently than we have done in the past. That's been something that's been happening in my household, Sergey, with some changes in our employment statuses. My partner lost her job a few months ago, and we've been trying to figure out how to replace that income through a more self-directed entrepreneurial type of movement in our lives. And those are the types of things that can create stress and right, it can require communication and role shifting. So maybe that's something that's going on within your life too, is how can we change our roles and potentially still keep the fire of our loves alive, right? Okay. Ani says, hey, Spencer, can you make the chart bigger and your profile smaller and switch the view? Maybe. We'll see. If enough people complain about it, maybe I will. We'll see. But I want you to be able to see the chart, but I'll think about it. I'll think about it. Steven says, Mercury at 24 degrees Aquarius in the third house. Looking forward to this solar eclipse. Nice. Rose says, already switched the laptop, but chart is too small to see in this view. Oh, so this is on the mobile view, or it's small? Okay. Oh, well, there you go. Everyone says so. In my opinion, AI may have good points, but greed is out of control, so do not trust it at the moment. We'll talk about that today. I've been doing a lot of research on the history of economics. Like I'll show you some books that I've been reading recently, Rose. And greed is a theme throughout that. I will say this: the system that we have, and I think, incentivizes greed. So as much as I want to hold individuals accountable for their role within that, I think that a more productive thing that we can do is to start seeing how the organization of society itself is actually incentivizing people to act in that manner. And when we understand that, we can start making changes to incentivize the opposite, to incentivize sharing. And this is something I've been really very, very interested in recently, is how do we incentivize sharing within our communities? I've been having conversations with all sorts of people. This started, really what it started through was a book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It continued through Sacred Economics, which I'm still kind of about 2/3 of the way through, with Charles Eisenstein. Another friend suggested this graphic novel, Economics, How the Economy Works and How It Doesn't Work, which is this beautiful graphic novel about the history of economics. Really, really amazing in understanding how we got to this point, how we got here through monopoly, how we got here through free markets, how we got here through just the philosophical ideals that have led to how we organize an economy. And I highly recommend everyone check out this book in particular first, Economics by Michael Goodwin, and illustrated by Dan Burr. I got this from my local library, and it's helping me to understand the concepts in sacred economics so much better, to the point where I'm curious, friends. I'm going to throw this out there. Let me know if this is an idea that sounds interesting to you. I'm thinking about putting together another offering that is kind of rooted in the astrology of the history of economics, and how we can help transition from this current system to one that is more communal, gift-based, and that eliminates some of the, I think, the core fundamental issues of all of the challenges that we're experiencing right now. In my mind, all of it, everything can be traced back to economics and the way that we deal with the monetization of our natural, intellectual, cultural resources. To me, that is a fundamental part of all the challenges we're experiencing. And that's why I've been so passionate about this. And I'm trying to figure out ways to bring in astrology, to bring in the group mind, where we can start talking about some of these things, where we can start talking about how to imagine a more just and fair and equitable world out there. And I think that we need to do it as a group, as a community. So let me know if that's something that appeals to you. I've been thinking about how I can maybe do this in the spirit of the gift economy, maybe through a pay what you can type of thing. But if you got ideas about it, if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to be part of something like that, let me know in the chat. Okay, let's see here. We'll talk about economics today too, because I think that there's been so many things happening in the collective that speak to different rules for people in power versus the masses. And a lot of that can be traced back to how we set up our system of reward and our system of exchange, our monetary systems, all of those things. I think that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries and all of these other influences are showing me that the time is ripe for us to start telling a new story. One that is not of separation, but one of cooperation. One where we're working together to take care of this beautiful planet and to get the abundance that it creates to everyone in a more equitable fashion. And like John Lennon, you may say I'm a dreamer, right? But I'm not the only one. And I think that we're all starting to get so disenchanted, right? With Neptune moving out of Pisces, there's this like waking up, this drawing out of energy, this disenchantment with the way things have been, where I think that the time is ripe for us to imagine and work together to find something that could work better for not just the elites, not just people who have had power, but for everyone and for this planet. Because I think that this is the other thing that we don't talk about enough when we talk about wealth inequality. The planet just can't sustain this type of extraction anymore. And we're going to see increasingly inhospitable conditions the more that we buy into this old system of greed, of turning natural resources and monetizing every single thing in service, etc. We just can't sustain it anymore. So we have to figure out something new for our own survival. And to do that, we have to think about the philosophical stories that brought us here. This is, I think, what part of my role is as a storyteller and someone who is able to see things through a symbolic lens. How do we start visualizing new stories and new philosophies that will lead to different actions taken on the physical plane? I don't think you can have one without the other. You can suggest band-aids to some of these issues, but if we don't attack the problem from a fundamental core of belief, we will be doomed to repeat the same things over and over and again. I think that this is what this eclipse is speaking to on some level as well. Ani says it's the monetary Hunger Games. Yeah, absolutely. Scott Scorpio Suntero, what's up? Says, hi, Spencer. How are you doing in the chat? It says all in the chat. Nice to see you, Scott. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Cosmic Rose. Okay, let's see. Even with biz, I love co-ops. Yeah, well, we'll talk about that a little bit today. Ani says, I'm in, take my money, LOL, sacred economics. Oh, it says, I'm in, take my money, LOL, sacred economics. I like it. Still need to order that book you recommended. I love this book. I want to read all of Charles Eisenstein's works right now because he has another book called The Ascent of Humanity, which is really the story of how humanity has bought into this myth of perpetual growth, which is not how nature works. Nature works in cycles of growth and recession, growth and recession. That's what we're in right now in winter. This is nature receding back into itself to restore itself so that it can continue to have a fruitful cycle. We've bought into this illusion that we are somehow separate from this cycle. And our money system reflects that. And I think that that's super important. And Charles Eisenstein is very, very good at contextualizing that. And I do think that there's some background information that we need, though, which is why that economics with an X on the end of it, that graphic novel, I think is a really great starting place. Take care, Stephen. Nice to see you. Let's see. Ani says, the enchantment is over, but the spell remains. Right. We're at an important transition point. My bracelet says dream and love, got to dream if we want to do it. Exactly. But we have to figure out how to have that collective dream so that it is where we can bring people into it and show them the advantages of that dream, not just the things that we have to give up, but the value of transitioning into something different, the gifts that we would receive by doing so. Okay, so let's talk about the sun and the moon in Aquarius 3, because I think this is part of what is influencing our discussion today with the eclipse. The Aquarius 3 decan is one that is an end of a process. It's an end of a process that we started in Aquarius 1, which is related to leaving something behind. Really, the Decanic story in Aquarius speaks towards a conflict, number one. We have I'll show you how we contextualize this. So we had a conflict in the beginning, Aquarius 1, this is called conflict and defeat. We have the smug winner here. We have people that are have been defeated, that are going off into exile. This is one of the main themes of Saturn in general, but Aquarius is also part of this story, is going off into exile, saying, you know what, I do not feel in alignment with the centralized power. So I'm going to go off, whether intentionally or by force, into exile. We see in the second decan of Aquarius a transition period, moving from one shore to the next, communication between the old and the new, communication between heaven and earth, etc. And then when we get to the final decan of Aquarius, which this eclipse is going to be perfecting in, we are finally leaving the known behind. We're not necessarily just communicating between the centralized power and the fringe. We're saying, you know what? I am tired of this. I want something new. I don't know exactly where I'm going because this guy's literally looking backwards, but I can't stay here. You know, it's like you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It's that moment. It's closing time for something in our society, right? Now, there is nuance to this. Book T and the Book of Thoth call it the Lord of Unstable Effort, the Lord of Futility. This is a lunar decan in the Saturn-ruled sign of Aquarius. The moon moves very quickly. It can be very emotional. It can be something that changes quite a bit. So sometimes our plans may not have solid form yet when we are dealing with Aquarius 3. I really think that the action and energy of this decan, like Austin Coppock says in his book, 36 Faces, is untying old karmic knots. He calls it the knot. And to do so, we need to revisit some of our old stories, some of our old narratives, maybe even some old relationships, some old friendships, some old ways of doing things. We have to revisit it so that we can understand what we were supposed to glean from it, and then finally to let it go, right? And to pay our karmic debt and move forward. Now you can see in this card that we have 2 swords that were left behind. We can't take everything with us, but we're taking 5 swords of knowledge and wisdom with us. So what is described in this Decanic language is a growing frustration with how things have been. One where we say, I don't know how to, I don't necessarily know where I'm going yet, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this the same exact way. And this decan gives us the strength and the courage, really, I think, to say, I'm done. I'm done with doing it this way. I can't do it this way anymore. And I think that we've been feeling this over the last few months very acutely, where, you know, I've been talking with my partner and I after we've been trying to piece together the new life after she was laid off from her farmer's market job. And we've been talking about kind of Frankensteining things together. And that can be a little bit of an Aquarius 3 type of energy, where you're trying to Frankenstein together elements of the past with leaping out and taking a risk into your future. Now, there is a spirit in this decan, a daimon, named Osiris. And Osiris was the Egyptian god that the story goes that he is the husband of Isis, and he got into a conflict with Isis's brother Set, and Set murdered Osiris, split him into many pieces, and scattered him across the countryside. Now, I think what part of what Osiris is trying to teach us, eventually, Isis had to regather those pieces and reconstruct Osiris. They couldn't find the phallus. They had to make the phallus out of something else. So that's interesting, right? We can't always find all of the pieces. We can't revisit everything. Sometimes the procreative part is missing, right? But Isis gathered all those pieces together. Somehow they were able to procreate, and Horus, the new god, was born. Now, Osiris couldn't keep his form together indefinitely. Osiris had to become the lord of the underworld. He couldn't stay within the realm of the living. Now, this is important symbolically, because we may have to go gather pieces of information, gather pieces of belief, gather conversations with people from our past, so that we can understand it and birth something new. I think that really is the energy of this decan, is revisiting something temporarily, taking what we can learn from it, and then taking the leap out into the unknown. Now, that isn't always an easy process. That isn't always a point A to point B process. That can lead to some unstable effort. That can lead to some emotional issues, right? There's some emotionality. That can lead to some nostalgia. It can lead to some, I don't know. It could lead to feelings of loss. It could feelings of sadness. But I do think that this decan is designed to allow us to get so frustrated with something that we're like, I just can't keep doing this. For me, that frustration is capitalism. So I've been trying to be something that I'm not within a system that I don't align with. Now, this book, Economics, is helping me to understand that there are advantages and disadvantages to all systems of organizing our economy. The answer might not be Stalinistic communism, right? There are problems with all of these theoretical models, right? There's problems with Marxism. There's problems with socialism. There are issues with some of these things. So understanding the problems and the benefits of some of them can help us to talk it out, right? One of the things that I learned from my dive into economics, the graphic novel, was most of the economies that we have around the world that are successful right now, they are not pure capitalistic or pure socialistic or pure communism. They are mixed economies. They are ones that have elements of socialism baked into them. Anytime you pay taxes and that tax goes to build a road that the community uses, or that those taxes are building infrastructure, that is a part of a socialistic element within a free market capitalist society. So we have this mixed economy, right? And how do we take some of those elements that are good within that and start to make changes around that so that we don't fall victim to the exploitive parts of it? Like, free markets are important. Free markets create the ability to create competition between people or companies so that the prices don't get fixed in this astronomical way through monopoly. I think this is one of the things that a lot of people on both sides of a political spectrum can agree with, is that monopolies aren't good. The only people that like monopolies are that very, very infinitesimal percentage of billionaires that benefit from it. So how do we bust up monopolies? How do we start thinking in ways that are more cooperative? Because we have to. And one of the things I love about Charles Eisenstein and Sacred Economics is that he's not necessarily demonizing humanity for the last, I don't know, a couple thousand years of this story of ascent. He's saying that this is part of our growth as a species, and that this is the point where we have to mature as a species, where we come out of an extractive model and into one that is more stable and more harmonious. I really like that. That doesn't mean he's not critical of certain ways that humanity has acted in the past. I mean, enslaving people, having all of the wealth be concentrated amongst the very, very top percentage of people. He's very critical of all of those things. But instead of just bemoaning that, he says, how do we as a species start to evolve? And I think with this new eclipse here, this new moon eclipse in Aquarius, we have to be able to revisit how we got to this point, how we got the concentration of wealth in this very tiny percentage of people. What were the systems that helped create that? What were the things within us as humans, as consumers? I even hate describing people as consumers at this point. When we used to be citizens, and now we're described as consumers. When did consuming become the end-all be-all of being human? That's a new story that we get to tell, that we get to start to dismantle. That's the karmic knot that we were all, at least in America, born into. We were born into this system. Okay, so the part of revisiting is understanding our past, understanding our history, understanding our mindset around it, understanding what we even decided wealth meant. In many indigenous cultures, to be wealthy was measured not by what you had accumulated, but what you could give to your community, the amount of generosity that you could provide. What a dynamic concept. What a wonderful concept, right? Maybe that's part of the new story that we can tell. What we are truly wealthy when we can start thinking about how we can share what we have with others. That's what makes us wealthy. The other things to think about that could be changes in this story. How do we start thinking about wealth not just as physical currency, where we've taken things that are qualitatively valuable, this beautiful planet. There is no price that you can put on a forest, but we have tried to do so, right? We've turned a qualitatively priceless thing into a quantitatively, okay, measured money. And we do this with culture. We turn culture into something that has been exchanged freely. Songs used to be exchanged freely around the campfire for centuries. We've turned that into something that is commodified and quantified and then gatekept, right? Gatekeeper. We say, oh no, this is my intellectual property now. And we've done this with so many things. We've done this with this transition of things that were part of a gift exchange with one another amongst community members. And we've turned it into something commodified. Now, one of the arguments in this book of sacred economics is not that we need to be that we need to be completely ascetic, that we have to give up all of the wonderful things that we enjoy in the world. What he's saying, though, is that sometimes those things need to be removed from the monetary system completely. That's how we build community. That's how we build gift economy. So this is the thing that I've been working through. I see this as a core fundamental issue as we see corruption blasted into our screens day after day after day, where people are not being held accountable for egregious abuses of power and resources. When we see that, that should tell us that this system doesn't work anymore, that this story of separation, this story of monetizing the priceless things that we share in common with each other as a human species doesn't work, or it has run its course more accurately. So this is, to me, part of my own growth as a person, as someone who has always felt out of alignment with this culture and with this way of exchanging, to my own detriment oftentimes. Like, my solution to this has been like, I'm going to try not to participate in this as much as possible. Now, I'm running up against the reality check. There's Saturn. There's always a reality check when we get to these points. The reality of, well, you can't pay your electric bill with like good ideas, right? Or with like idealism. So you run against the reality of things, and how do we start shifting within that? Now, this is where I throw it back to the community. How do we put our collective brains to this? It's going to take some time. Solutions don't always come overnight. But I think that the first part of this is understanding that what we were doing in the past doesn't work. Okay. Cosmic Rose says creative underground for a while. Yes. Maru is here. Says, hey, Spencer and community, briefly joining here. Hope to catch you offline tomorrow. Thank you, Mara, for stopping in. Mara's joining us from Germany. So appreciate you, friend. Rose says, change always brings change, which creates a loss of something. There you go. We have to be willing to give up some things. We have to be willing to give up an old way of doing things, an old story in particular. That's sometimes the hardest knot to untie, is an idealistic one of something that we are so ingrained in us that we just assume is the way that it has to be, or the way that it's always been done. That's the difficult part of this unraveling, is looking our own assumptions in the mirror. Our safeguards against monopolies just got removed. Well, that's what we're seeing in the collective right now. There were these safeguards. If we go and look at the economics history graphic novel, we had plenty of these safeguards that were put into place in the early 20th century. Those have been systematically dismantled over the course of that century and are getting worse and worse and worse. The oligarchs are taking away all of those safeguards that basically let our economy be somewhat functional from the late 1800s until about 1975 or so. Now, there were problems with that. There were a ton of problems with that. We were still polluting. There was still complete inequality with the people in society that were in the minority. There was all sorts of issues, but we had a semi-functional society. It has been completely dysfunctional really since the late 70s, and it's getting worse and worse and worse as we go along, to the point where just the masses who just want to be able to enjoy time with their family, to live in peace, we can't do so anymore, right? And there are plenty of people who have taken on the externalities of that for so long. This is another concept that I hope I can get through to our audience here today, is that the abundance that we have experienced comes at a cost that is often hidden. That's called an externality. We externalize a lot of the comfort that we experience in the Western civilization to developing nations. We export violence. We export environmental waste and damage to the oceans. We export all of these things. And once we start reclaiming those externalities and internalize the cost of things, we will measure their actual cost much differently. I had a long conversation again with my very patient father this week. It'd been a couple of weeks. I had a difficult conversation with him a couple of weeks ago where my ideas were less developed. And I would caution sometimes people, it's easy to get into an argument with people before your ideas are fully formed. And that's really just an off-gassing of a steam valve of frustration. And sometimes that's appropriate. But oftentimes it's better to maybe get a fully formed idea about something before you have a difficult conversation with somebody who you're trying to convince of a certain position. And as I was more developed with my intellectual position with this, my father and I had a nice conversation about it. And he was starting to realize the external costs of his comfort and security and convenience. And it was nice to see the light bulbs go on. And I think these are the types of conversations we have to have with people who have really been in their comfort zones and start to, I wouldn't say, we can shake people out of that in gentle ways, right? We're gonna push people toward their limits, and then we might have to let them absorb it a little bit and then come back and digest what we've said, and then maybe we have a new perspective. I think that's super important. I have had challenges in the past, Rose and friends, I get really excited about something and I just want to share it. I get fired up. I'm a Leo rising and I get fired up and I'm like, this is the way it's got to be done now. Like, sometimes it takes a while for people to come into alignment with that. Okay, so we have to kind of be patient with people around us that we're trying to bring into this new way of thinking. We have to make sure that we're our own ability to communicate these ideas is developed, and then we have to kind of workshop it in places, in public spaces like this, right? In like spaces where I think we've created a community here where we're curious about new ways of doing things in the world that are more equitable, that are taking into account the sustainability of our planet. I really feel that way. I feel like a lot of people here share those values, and that's something that I like being able to kick around on this channel. Maru says, to those interested in social economic systems, Peronismo is a very interesting proposal that actually worked in Argentina. Tell me more. I would love to hear more. I would love to hear how different cultures and societies have tried to approach this problem, because we often only hear the American or the European side of these things. And this is why I love having a global community here, because we share this planet. Our actions affect everyone on the planet. We might not feel that way, but there's so many ripple effects that having it be a global conversation is super, super important, because then we take out the nationalized interest with all of this. It's impossible to save the planet by just one individualized national perspective. It's literally impossible. There has to be a coordination globally for these types of things. We might have localized governments, we might have localized actions that we take, but we have to have that conversation globally. All right, love the view of Earth from the ISS. Oh, I'd love to see that. Yeah. Training ourselves to look forward is a good Aquarian habit. Yes, indeed. Prefer to discuss and learn instead of argue. It's good to be able to do that in ways that call people in rather than call people out. That's something I've had to work on in my life. I'm an intense person, especially when I've got a new idea. The Virgo parts of me are really good at breaking something down and seeing the flaws in something, but trying to build it back up as a point of growth for my own character. And I think for a lot of us who feel really passionately about change. No worries, friend. Okay, so Sun and Moon in Aquarius 3. I think we've broken that down pretty well, okay? Knowing when to quit, I think, is a really important part of this. Knowing when to leave something behind. The opposite decan is Leo 3, where we might be defending a position that we have really deeply ingrained. This is another reason why this type of eclipse is very informative for people like Sergey and I, who have Leo 3 rising signs, where we might be really entrenched in certain beliefs and positions. And this type of eclipse may really challenge us into coming off of some of those things and envisioning something new. And this is true for a lot of people who have Leo placements. How can we come off of a deeply held belief or position so that we can change and grow and come into alignment with the Tao, come into alignment with the collective good? Rose says, Peronism is defined through its three flags: social justice, economic independence, and political sovereignty. I love all of that. Yeah. I've been reading, it's amazing to me too, Rose and Maru, how the algorithm of the internet can change dramatically when we start engaging with these types of things. On Instagram, I started following some accounts that were talking about sustainability, about the well-being economy, about different ways of looking at economics that are more equitable. And you'd be amazed at the new things that the algorithm is spitting out to me now. I love it. Like I just had some recent, I had some recent reels that were shown to me about Scotland, which is a country now that has started to encodify into law community well-being within their system. And this is something that it's not optional. It's not optional that the choices that we make and where we invest our resources or invest our gifts and money and time and energy and effort has to have some communal benefit. Like these are things that are happening in multiple countries across the world that are attempting to do something new and innovative. So I love that, and I would love to research that even further. But this is why I love this community, because we're putting our heads together with it. Okay, so this is the sun and moon. Now let's talk a little bit about the host. So we've got the host in Aries 1, and Saturn will be moving into Aries later on this evening, as I'm recording this on the 13th of February. It will immediately come into an application in conjunction with Neptune. It is already sort of traveling close enough to consider it a bit of a conjunction, but it will be much more intense when they're in the same sign. Saturn in Aries, we've talked about this at great length last week, so go back and check that out if you missed that one. But the energy of Saturn in Aries is a challenging one for a number of reasons. The first reason is that Saturn is not comfortable in the domicile of Mars. It is not, it is a place where their agendas are very different. Aries' agenda is one of severing and separating from the community, from the communal energy, to individuate, to express extreme yang, to make a new beginning and a new start, and to do it now, right away, without any considering the consequences of your actions. Saturn is not like that. Saturn says, you probably want to plan this out. You probably want to slow down. You probably want to create structure. You probably want to see how this is all going to work out in the long term. You might want to pace yourself. So when Saturn moves into Aries, there is this discomfort. And in traditional astrology, we assign different values to planets in certain signs. And this is called a planet being in its fall. The fall is related to being in a low place, the bottom of a well. So Saturn is at its least, I guess, powerful, you could say. I don't know if that's necessarily true as far as its effects out in the world. Saturn is extremely powerful still. In Aries, it can have a lot of effect on our worlds, but it is not resourced in the way that it would desire to be resourced. Now, the other part of Saturn in Aries is, I think that Saturn also is a reckoning for wherever it is going to be moving through. Saturn says, here are the consequences of this action. To me, the greatest revelation I've had about Saturn, because of its exaltation in Libra, and because of its being referred to as a planet of nemesis, is related to Saturn's role as a balancing force. I think ultimately Saturn is at its best when it is decreasing that which is excessive and increasing that which is lacking. So when Saturn moves through a particular area of the zodiac, it has this rebalancing force. So what is going to be rebalanced with Saturn in Aries? Well, extreme yang energy. And I think that we've seen this already starting to bubble up from the collective, where we are rightfully criticizing extreme abuse of patriarchal thinking, extreme abuse of yang energy. I've seen a lot of things in the collective lately that are like, you know what we need in the world? Less men. And on some level, I can agree with that. I think that we need less toxic masculinity, I think, is what we really need. I don't know if you're gonna have a tough sell if you say, you know, we need less men. You know, like that's taking a group and reducing it down to an ideal or something like that, which has, to be fair, has been happening to women for centuries. So I think that what we need is more responsible masculinity, more responsible men, more men that can share power rather than hoard it. Men that have stories of masculinity that can be in service of the collective rather than trying to dominate it. And I think Saturn is actually going to help us with that, because Saturn says this excessive yang energy, this bull in a china shop energy, this isn't helping anyone. This is toxic. This is creating suffering on this planet. And I do agree that power should be shared through the masculine and the feminine energies. That are two sides of a whole. They are two parts, and when they are in balance, they can be very complementary to one another. When they are out of balance, as they have been for many, many hundreds of years, we have the result of that which we see today. Environmental destruction, too much yang, abuse of power, as we've been seeing on the news, people thinking that they're above consequences, all of these things, collateral damage, as far as the eye can see. These are the things that I think Saturn is going to be bringing a reckoning towards. Now, in Aries, especially first decan of Aries, it's called the Lord of Dominion. It's called the Axe in Austin Coppock's book. It's swinging wildly without thinking about the consequences of its actions. It's trying to dominate. It's trying to consume. It's trying to catch other things on fire, right? So I do think that I think that one of the things that just came into my mind about this too is Saturn is also going to show us the consequences of the element that it's in, fire, right? While Saturn was in Pisces, there was a lot of talk about ocean responsibility. How do we become responsible stewards of the oceans? I watched a beautiful documentary by David Attenborough called Ocean, where he spoke to some of the real challenges of the way that we treat our beautiful life-giving oceans and how we can bring it back into harmony and equilibrium. I think with this, the first thought that was coming is we may have to be rebalancing how we deal with fire, right? Or with power. It could be through guns, like fire, gunpowder, that type of fire. It also could be through like forest fires and things like that. I think Saturn and Aries could also bring us a different way of being good stewards of our forest resources and gifts, which is really important because I think that every single summer we see more and more forest fire activity and more damage that's created through that. So I think that this is another thing that we could see with Saturn and Aries. But overall, Saturn also has the quality of binding us to responsibilities. One of the things that Aries 1 is asking us to do is to say, you need to make a new start. You need to be like springtime and be like the seed that is pushing through the soil to reach the light. You need to break through that crust. That yang energy is important for that. If we didn't have any yang energy, we would never start anything new. We have to be able to have the force of conviction to start something new. Now, the challenge of that is that we get stuck in thinking that has to be perpetual. When you study astrology through the lens of nature, you realize that it's not a perpetual utilization of any of the astrological energies leads to excess and to abuse and toxicity. Aries is just one phase of a greater cycle. Aries is individuating the little seed into the above ground experience so that it can start to spread its leaves out, so that it can start to have relationships with other beings on the planet. That little seed needs to have a relationship with the sun. That little seed needs to start having a relationship with the bees. That little seed starts to become food and plant matter for the rabbits and the squirrels and every other planetary being. It is the beginning of relationship, not just individuation to be an island that never relates to anything ever again. That is such a huge, different way of thinking about things. If we get stuck in this yang, perpetual yang energy, we will not have the fuel to keep burning that fire. If we exhaust all of the resources, if we take up too much energy from the soil, like the plant is going to rot or die. If it gets too much sun, it's going to burn. You see what I'm saying? It's going to burn, it's going to die. Same is applied to human beings. If we have too much forceful yang energy as these planets start to shift into these positions, we will make one of two mistakes, I think. First of all, we will think that we have to do everything ourselves. We will think that that's the end point and the end goal, which it is not. It is the beginning of relationship. The second thing that might happen is that we might start to burn ourselves out with considering every single thing that we encounter as a fight or flight moment. You cannot live in a perpetual fight or flight experience. And it may feel like we have to because of the flooding of the zone of all the bullshit that we're experiencing right now. It makes it feel like every single moment is fight or flight. And even though it might feel that way, in this moment, as we're sitting here together, just spending some time through the ones and zeros on the internet, are you safe in this moment? Are you at peace in this moment? Is your life at risk in this moment? I hope the answer is no. And I think that this is important to realize even as we utilize and start to stoke the fires that are necessary to make change, to bust through the surface, to start to spread our leaves out and absorb the sun of new realization and new life and vitality. But we have to pace ourselves. And Saturn in Aries is going to make that a little bit harder than normal in the beginning of this, because we're going to feel like we have to do everything now or we won't ever get the opportunity again. This is why when we do magical remediations, bringing in energy like Saturn in Aquarius or Saturn in Capricorn could be really helpful, because it'll help us to slow down a little bit and see that every single second of the day doesn't have to be a fight or flight adrenaline response. Go check out Third Coast Mojo. Go get some Saturn in Aquarius scientific method so that you can sustain this energy so that the new start, the new seed can actually grow roots, can have a foundation, so that the new start isn't just one that flops over. As a gardener, many of you will understand if you get too much heat and light in the very beginning of a process, that little plant can grow really spindly growth, okay? If you don't let it rest, it can have spindly growth. It can be clear. It's not a deep green. It's not producing its own energy. It's just like blanched out, okay? If it's not getting enough light, sometimes it's stretching too hard, right? So we have to have the right amount of balance between yang, yin, the right amount of light, the right amount of energy, so that that plant, which is a metaphor for the new ideas, the new society, the new culture, the new economic system, whatever it is that you're trying to create in your own personal life, has the chance to take root, to be able to survive the challenges to that. And there will be challenges. When we're trying to create, like, for example, the more idealistic amongst us today who are trying to create a whole new economic system and undo 10,000 years of monetization of the commons, there's going to be some pushback on that. Like my own daughter asked me the other day, Papa, are you communist? And I'm like, I think that's the oversimplification of what my feelings are with it. I see the disadvantages of abusive communism as well. And I think that I am trying to bring about an idea that is changing towards more cooperation. Now, you can label it however you want. I do believe in some parts of the free market like that are important. I also believe in cooperating and sharing resources. And there are ideas in these books about just even completely changing the way our currency works. One idea, just for those of you who are curious, and I won't belabor this point too much longer, but one idea is the idea of a negative interest currency, where instead of gaining value and interest, if you hold on to your money, it will actually decay over time. Now you're like, well, why would I want to have money that decays in value over time? Well, it would make it harder to hoard it. And what money was originally intended to be was a means of exchange, a means of circulating the things that we actually want: food, shelter, clothes, instead of having it be an end of itself, right? Because we have a system of interest and usury, money has become an end goal rather than just a means of exchange. If that currency had negative interest, if it's slightly over time decreased in value, there would be no advantage. There would be no incentive to hoard it. This is one of the interesting ideas in sacred economics. Now, I have to think about all the ramifications of that, and I have to think about all the practicalities of that. But that's one idea that could be returning and restoring money to its original intent, which is helping to get the gifts of this world to other people and help that exchange continue to flow. Our problem in this world is not one of abundance. We have an abundant planet that will provide for us if we take care of it. We have more food in America than we can possibly eat that would feed all of these other hungry nations, but so much of it goes to waste because it is a problem of circulation. It's a problem of getting to point A to point B. And we have to find new innovative ways to get those resources and gifts from point A to point B, because right now the veins that take the pump from the heart are blocked. It's like we have a bunch of cholesterol that's building up from years of abuse, and we have to, how do we help get the nourishing oxygen to the rest of our body right now? Okay, those are the questions that I think that Saturn and Aries can help us to ask. And it's sextile this eclipse. That's what we have with sextile here. It's conjoining Neptune, but it's sextile the eclipse. So you might be feeling some desire to make a new start. You might be feeling a strong, almost like you're compelled through Ananke, the force that compels the earth to spin on its axis in Greek philosophy. You might feel compelled to make a new start, compelled to break away from the old story. And you might need to get kind of angry. Anger has a purpose. Anger sets things into motion. You can use that anger to start setting something into motion. I saw a little interesting mini interview with Michelle Obama on some reel recently. And she was talking about go high. She has a quote about, we go high, if they go low, we go high. And she was kind of contextualizing that. It says that doesn't mean that we don't get angry or upset or hold people accountable. It just means that we need to do something productive with that. Instead of just having it be a chaotic spraying of our anger and frustration, we need to focus it. We need to focus it into making the changes that are necessary. And I think that that's the way to deal with this in a way that is responsible and mature, is figuring out how to direct that anger, that rage that is necessary to make the change sometimes, into the changes that you need to make within your world and within each other's worlds. I'm going to check in with the chat here because we've been kind of going on one. We've been on one for a bit here today. Oh, let's see. Rose says, yin here at your service. I love it. Put Xena in charge. Go. I appreciate the sentiment of empowering the sacred feminine. I think it's very, very, very important. I think sharing power is very important. Someone had sent me something about, like, they were talking about Tolkien, and they were making the connection, or trying to force the connection of after World War I and II, we saw more social programs coming up because a third of the men on the planet had died. And I can see that that could be a connection. I think that it was more complicated than that. I will remind the author of that article that there were still not women as presidents and as Congress people during the FDR New Deal that came after World War II. There were still men that were in those positions of power. I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that there's some sort of false equivalency that is happening through that. I agree with the premise of appreciating the balance between those two forces. So I do think we need to empower women, and I think we need to have more of them in charge of our governments as well. But I think we need to have just balanced human beings in general who are in touch with both their yang and yin sides, and that are understanding a new story of one that is of collective benefit rather than individual domination. I think that is important. I would also point all of you to a story by an author, Brian K. Vaughan. It's called Why? The Last Man Standing. And he explores a female-dominated society where most of the men on the planet had died. And it's a really interesting intellectual conversation about what could potentially happen with that. So I would guide you towards that resource too. There are pros and cons to all of these types of things as well, but I do think we need to empower the yin, right? We need to empower the yin, whether that comes through physical women or whether it comes just through more balanced human beings in general that are out there putting things together. I'm for it. CA has already been tested by fire. Yeah, Canada is right, and America, like the west coast of the United States, has been on fire perpetually each season. Take your rake and shove it, Rose says. There you go. Devin is here. What's up? Devin says, bring back the indigenous practice of controlled burns. Exactly. Responsibly managing forest resources, going back to Saturn coming into Aries and rebalancing our use of that resource, the use of that element, I guess you could say. I think that we do have to respect the power of fire. Fire is both destructive and creative. There are some seeds in the forest that won't even open unless they've been exposed to the heat of a forest fire. So I agree 100%, Devin. I think it's more about responsible stewardship rather than saying we should never touch these things. We should never have any human interaction with these pristine forests. That wasn't how indigenous communities work. They were working in partnership with the natural cycle and community through like the controlled burns. I agree 100%. Scam Pastrini says, I believe in a mixed system. Yeah, I do too. I think that there are advantages to having a free market where we encourage competition that keeps prices low rather than having a monopoly, whether it's through corporate monopolies or through government monopolies, which is what happens sometimes when we have an extreme form of communism. So I think that there are ways to bring both the best of both of those worlds into what we're experiencing. And what I love about Michael Goodwin and about Charles Eisenstein is they give historical examples of those mixed economies that are successful and mixed systems that work. This is for those of you who are like looking at Mondami in New York. He's not proposing a Stalinistic communism. He's proposing a mixed system that actually takes into account some of the and protects some of the already in place social programs that were put into place in like the FDR New Deal. You know, he's saying let's actually fund some of these social programs while it's still having market competition that creates that functional mixed system. So I'm right there with you, Scampestrini. Rose says, might be a big pushback against that one, decreasing value of money. I think there will be pushback on that. And I'm still in the chapters of trying to figure out how to make that, you know, practical. I'm not saying that I necessarily am advocating for that yet, but he is a philosopher that brings up an interesting point. I think that as we explore these new ideas, we have to talk about them and say, and we have to challenge them. We have to say, well, that's an interesting idea, but how would it work in practice? And the part of the problem of what we've had in different economical models in the past, Rose, is that they have been based completely on abstractions. Part of the reason we have economic theory that doesn't work, okay, is that it's based on a math equation, not on human nature. When you take out the irrationality of human nature sometimes, you'll have a mathematical model that cannot be, you can't possibly work because it's only based on abstraction. That's Uranus to me. That's like the hubris of trying to do something that's completely removed from the way things actually work. So how do we test these things? How do we challenge them? We talk about these ideas and say, well, parts of that sound good. How do we implement that? Parts of that aren't going to work. How do we discard parts of that? That's why we have a discussion rather than saying, well, this is the way it has to be. I'm not at that point yet. I'm not at that phase yet. I'm in the curiosity phase with a lot of this. And I'm trying to share these ideas to see if you guys can get curious about this so that we can put our heads together. Slaney's Gateway, Devin says, I think a wealth cap is also necessary. Yeah, and there were wealth caps in the past when we had a progressive tax system that was even more progressive than it was today. there was a point, I think, in history of the United States where there was a 70% tax on the 1%, basically. And I think people don't understand progressive tax systems. What it basically means is that your income up to a certain level is taxed at 1%. So like everybody that makes up to $18,000, let's just say that that's the cap, is taxed at 10%. Any money that you make above that, up to another level, is taxed at 20%, up to like $30,000. Let's just say these aren't the right numbers, but just bear with me here. And progressively higher. It doesn't mean that someone who makes $1 million a year is taxed at 70% for their entire $1 million. It just means that everything above, let's say, $400,000 is taxed at that 70%. Do you see how that is helping to redistribute the worst egregious consolidation and greed? Like, to me, that changed. Like, that changed in various points. Okay, but Reagan changed this a lot. Reagan is one of the worst offenders of this. He made a huge tax cut for the wealthy, brought that 70% down to like 30% or less, and we've progressively been getting worse with this. And he also raised taxes on the middle class. So he did a double whammy. He said, I'm going to do tax cuts for my rich buddies and raise the taxes on the middle class. And somehow, through some arbitrary, weird thing, it's going to trickle down. It's insane. He's a terrible economist, I guess you could say. I don't know what his character is like as an individual, but his way of thinking about economics was very, very destructive for the planet and for the wealth gap. Rose says redwoods want fires to sprout. Exactly. So there are certain things that respond to growth from being forged in the fire, so to speak. So that's another way to use Saturn in Aries, right? Now they want Bitcoin that is not physically real either. A problem, right? Because it's not backed by anything. Another idea that Charles Eisenstein had was backing currency with like carbon credits, backing currency with actual something that would incentivize people to restore the commons rather than to destroy it. Here's an example of this. I just got a hat, and I'm not sponsored by this, although if you want to sponsor me, 10 Tree, I would love to talk about your products. 10 Tree is a company this is a 100% organic hat, organic cotton, where their business model is every time you purchase any of their clothes, they plant 10 trees to offset their carbon footprint. Okay. So like I got a little QR code that showed me exactly where they planted my trees. And for this particular hat, they planted, oh, what was it? Like seagrass near a protected wildlife ocean place. So they planted 10 kelp trees in a kelp forest. And I was like, that's really cool. And you can continue to see how this is an incentivizing way of being responsible with our money that is backed in a way that will help restore the economy. Now, that's not exactly what Eisenstein was saying by backing the currency with something that isn't destructive, but it is an outcropping of that idea. Right? Bitcoin is a really notorious one because it is so abstract. It's not traceable. It can be used to do crime because it's not traced to anything. And it's just kind of a giant Ponzi scheme. Like, I don't know. I have to learn more about how Bitcoin actually works to speak really, really knowledgeably on it. But part of the issue that got us to this place economically was Richard Nixon taking us off of the gold standard in the mid-70s. The gold standard is basically every dollar that you have is backed by a certain percentage or ounce of gold. And when you get taken off of the gold standard, what the Federal Reserve does is it will pump money into the system that's not backed by anything. It's backed by debt, right? And we have to keep turning more of the commons and resources into money to be able to continue to finance the debt. Okay. And it's a perpetual cycle that leads us to just creating more and more destruction on this planet. I was reading an interesting chapter today about the increasing of technology. Now, Bitcoin is a new technology, right? It's a lot of problems with Bitcoin and with cryptocurrency as far as how it was created through great massive amounts of electricity that were used to mine Bitcoin. Really destructive. I've known some people who have mined Bitcoin in the past, and they had these huge servers set up in their basement that just, their electric bills went through the roof. They're generating a lot of heat. They were generating a lot of environmental destruction through that. And one of the thoughts that Chuck here was talking about was, when we have new technologies, they promise efficiency. And the promise has been one of, when we have this new technology, and this is applicable for AI as well. When we have this new technology, what it will promise is leisure. We say, if we just do things more efficiently, we'll just have all the time in the world to just sit back and relax and study philosophy and like do all the things that human beings love to do, right? In theory, but what has happened in practice is that every time we have a technological advancement and the means of production have become more efficient, instead of doing less work, what the people in power will encourage us to do is their insatiable greed for profit it's like Rahu. It can never be satisfied. So instead of getting people to work less, we say, well, you know what we need to do? We need to get people to consume more. So we just increase consumption rather than work less and have less leisure time. They find new ways to manipulate us into consuming. And with AI, this could be a crazy inflection point with this, because that could make so many jobs obsolete. The Industrial Revolution actually made a lot of labor obsolete, through machines, etc. But it really just increased the amount of things that we were making, okay? And our consumption just went up. It didn't give us any more leisure time because we met that efficiency with more and more consumption. And that's what's accelerated the destruction of our planet. Now you have AI coming in, and AI is going to say, well, we're going to make human beings obsolete in a lot of these things. And then you put people out of jobs, right? And then they don't have any money to buy anything. So the whole economy just starts crashing. And it takes massive amounts of electricity and water to feed these AI models. Every time you make a ChatGPT question, it just like sucks up resources from the electrical grid and the water capacity. Also, by the way, if you didn't know already, ChatGPT donates a ton of money to the Trump administration. So if you're using ChatGPT, you're funding fascism right now. So unsubscribe from that. But I think that we have to start asking different questions. This is why there's proponents for like universal basic income and things of that nature, because then if we have this type of baseline, we're not going to have to keep destroying our priceless natural resources to create and commodify and turn it into money and goods and services. We won't have to do that as much in theory, but that's going to take a different mindset, right? Yeah. Rose says that helped create the middle class, right? Like I said, the period from the 1800s, 1700s to the 70s, yes, we did have a creation of the middle class. Now, I will also offer that there was an extreme externalization of costs that happened for that middle class in Western civilization. And that cost came through the backs of slave labor and on the backs of developing or third world countries. So we also have to always keep that in mind, that there was an externalization of those costs that came through that extraction of wealth and labor that was never paid for through legal means. You know what I'm saying? So we have to be careful when we are talking about how that was actually a good thing. The abstraction qualified as debt-based economics using fractional reserve banking, math gymnastics to create something out of nothing, tax people to pay the imaginary debt. Absolutely. Fractional reserve banking, talked about quite a bit in the economics graphic novel. Basically, what that means is that you put your money in the bank, and the bank uses, how can I explain it? I could just look at it. I'll just explain it through the book itself. Love having resources like this. 49. On page 49, friends, it says that let's check out fractional reserve banking. Fractional reserve banking sounds exotic, but it's just the type of banking we're familiar with. Customers deposit their money and the bank lends it out, making money from the interest it charges. The bank doesn't lend all the money, it keeps a fraction in reserve, let's say 1/5 or 20%, and lends the rest. So in the 19th century, if someone deposited $1,000 in the bank might keep 20% and lend the remaining $800 to someone else, who would buy a steam engine with it. The seller would deposit the money in the bank, which might or might not be the same bank. It doesn't matter. The bank would keep 20% in reserve and lend out the remaining $640 to someone else, who would immediately open a bank account with it, and the cycle would continue. Here's a little version of this. You probably can't see it, but get the comic book. If the bank keeps lending money out and the money keeps coming back, the original $1,000 would create $4,000 in extra bank accounts. That $5,000 worth of bank accounts would be backed by $1,000 in cash and $4,000 in IOUs from the bank's borrowers. Okay, so that's important, right? Some people could get their money from the bank whenever they wanted, or write a check and let someone else get the money. The bank accounts worked like cash. So banks took $1,000 in cash and turned it into $5,000 in cash, like the creation of money out of nowhere. They did that by turning debt into money. The very thought of that makes some people see red, but I'm not sure why. Really, money is debt, an IOU from the rest of the world, exchangeable for works or goods. Fractional reserve banking still works today. It works because we don't all withdraw our money at once. The fraction is in the bank's vaults is enough to cover withdrawals on any given day. Instead, we mostly write checks to one another or send payments electronically, transferring ownership of the money while it stays in the bank. But in the 19th century, a rumor, true or false, that a bank was in trouble could start a run on the bank. Where's the money? Where? It's out making more money, the banker says, which is why many slumps were set off by panics. Buy some cloth? Love to, but my money vanished. Some people thought slumps were entirely due to financial hiccups like bank runs. Really, nobody knew why slumps happens. So this is the describing how the part of irrationality that comes in with economics, right? Or we say the bank run happened because people lost confidence in their money, right? And we've been creating money out of debt in this endless cycle that keeps perpetuating the extraction of beauty on this world. We can get into that, but maybe we should do that as a group and as a class at some point. SFDH is the only thing that trickles down. What is SFDH? Tell me more. Uses too much electricity too. Yep. And AI needs too much electricity. AI needs so much electricity. I don't think people really understand the cost of the tiny search or the little image that they're making. It's really exorbitant. And if you thought about the actual cost of that for future generations or for other people in the world, you might think twice about being so cavalier with that technology. Annie says Bitcoin is a digital ledger designed as a hedge against inflation, another abstraction to fight another abstraction that is being used against its original agenda. There you go. See, we've got, I knew we had smart people in this group. You're saying what I just typed both times. There you go. Let's see. Hold on one second. We have got a siren coming. Ani says, I study these things because I don't feel like I have a choice. The future of money. Wrong definition of money, eh? Shit flows downhill. There you go. There you go. Right. Yes. I don't think any of us have a choice whether to study this or not. I know that this might not be everyone's wheelhouse, but from my astrological 30,000 foot viewpoint, understanding the system that you are participating in, whether you choose to or not, that we're all forced to participate in, is so fundamental to making change that we have to be able to understand how we got here and how it actually works. It is confusing. When I started reading Sacred Economics, I was really confused. There was a lot of jargon. Some of it is intentionally confusing because it's just based on abstraction. But as I've started to see more practical, like easier to understand models through books like this, Economics, How Our Economy Works, graphic novel, and through books like Indigenous Economics, Sustaining Peoples and Their Lands by Ronald Trosper, Cradle to Cradle, a classic, how to remaking the way we make things, zero waste economies. Through doing that, you start to understand where real change can be made, okay? Rose said, popular saying, after a strike I participated in. There you go. This is why the world is divesting from the dollar. No trust, right? Yeah, there's a lot of different theoretical solutions to it. And I'm not gonna say that I have the market cornered on all these things, but I'm just sharing what I found, and maybe that will be useful and inspire you to do some more research about how we can make positive change within this. But again, I think it's an important discussion that is fundamental towards justice work. Fundamental. If you believe in social justice, you have to understand the economic system. 100%. You have to know how these things work, because it all filters back to this. All of the racial injustice, inequality, all of that is a distraction from wealth extraction. All of it, okay? All the environmental issues, they're economic issues, okay? All of the cultural, like, domination issues, all of the women's rights issues, they all can be brought back to how we deal with economics, okay? So super, super important. Let's keep going. Let's talk about Taurus. Now, this is really fascinating that we're talking about Taurus. First of all, before we do that, let's take a stretch break. Do me a favor, friends. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, stretch your legs. If you would like to sustain this channel through a gift, you can make a super chat or go to buymeacoffee.com. You can also sustain the channel through commenting, liking, subscribing, turning on the bell, sharing it with your friends, taking these ideas and sharing them with your community and trying to change the world. But since we're still in an imperfect mixed economy based on free market economics, I still have to pay mortgage and food and lights and computers with actual real currency, not with Bitcoin, or with negative interest currency, with real money. So if you want to make a donation, it's always appreciated. Let's stretch it out. Okay. Many accountants, Rose says, I know, are Taurians. Well, you've got a Taurus moon here on the midheaven. So I feel like I am utilizing some of that exalted moon energy to understand how to get resources from point A to point B. Rose, let me show you the decan of second decan of Taurus. Here it is. It's that Six of Pentacles. It couldn't be a more economic card in the whole zodiac, right, of tarot cards. And it's trying to figure out how to have a distribution of resources rather than a hoarding of them. The hoarding card is actually Capricorn 3. I can show you that one too. That's the Four of Pentacles, right? And the distribution of it actually comes after that. That's what's interesting. This is really, the tarot tells so many amazing stories. And let's tell the story of economy through the tarot briefly. Let's show it through. I'm going to pull all my pentacles out, and I'm going to go through very quickly the story of how resources get made and distributed through the language of astrology and the tarot, because this is going to help us to understand Uranus in Taurus 3 that is a huge effect on this eclipse. Okay. Y'all still with me? We've almost got the 2 hours. I love spending long form time with all of you. I love it. Love it. Every one of these is, I feel like not only a conversation, but like a class or like some sort of way of engaging our brains with one another. It's just a beautiful thing. I've got one more tarot pentacle to get. I've got to find, there it is. 2 of them. All right. So the story of Earth, tangible resources, starts with Capricorn 1, the 2 of Pentacles. We're deciding where we want to invest, right? Where do we want to invest our capital? Whether it's physical capital, natural capital, intellectual capital, cultural capital, social capital, etc. Okay? We have to find cooperation between people in our community to build the structures in our life, the means of production, with the 3 of Pentacles, the second decan of Capricorn. Eventually, the result of that, okay, we see maybe the lack of something or the beginning of something, the initiation, the balancing energy, the middle story, and then the result of that is an accumulation of resources at the end of the Capricorn Decanic series with the 4 of Pentacles. Now, we also show the results of hoarding that wealth in the 5 of Pentacles, the beginning of Taurus. Okay, we have some people that are destitute. We have some people that whose clothes have turned to rags in the 5 of Pentacles. We need to figure out how to distribute those energies and that resource to other people through the second decan of Taurus, which is where my moon and midheaven are. So these are important topics, I think, that come up in my mind a lot. And then in the last decan of Taurus, which we have Uranus here, we have seen we are evaluating the results of the seeds that we planted in the first decan of Taurus, of our ability to distribute energy from point A to point B in a balanced way. Okay. And we see that there's some problems that have come up. One of the things now that has been really interesting, I don't know why something just changed with my camera. 1 second. I don't know where that went. One moment. There, let's see. Did that change? Oh, well. All my soft filters and background lighting got changed. That's okay. We just needed to show everything. We needed to show everything in great clarity and great light today. Now we talk about the Taurus 3, right? And Taurus 3 is a decan that is all about understanding the results of our actions and evaluating where some things might have gone wrong. Today, what we're doing, while Uranus is hanging out in Taurus, is we are doing a critique of a system of exchange, our economic system, and evaluating where we went wrong. We have blight on the planet right now. That's what we see in the 7 of Pentacles. We see blight. We see an image that Pamela Coleman Smith crafted, probably inspired by the potato famines of the 1840s in rural Ireland. Now, we have similar conditions on the planet right now where we have people that aren't getting what they need. We're not getting food from point A to point B. We're not getting resources from people who have them to people who need them. Uranus is trying to work through this right now. Like, all of this research that I'm doing is probably inspired by Uranus and Taurus. It's saying, is there a better way? Can we shake up the old way of doing something and bring some new idea into the collective? So this eclipse is going to be making a square to Uranus and Taurus. Now, earlier, many of you are mentioning, that idea of negative interest currency might not be very popular because people's store of value starts to degrade the longer that they hold on to it. That's probably not a popular idea in the way that we normally think about creating security. Our money losing value over time doesn't make us feel secure. One thing that he is offering as a way of dealing with that, this might be a Uranus and Taurus 3 idea, is that the way that we create security is not through a hoarding of wealth or resources, but through exchange of gifts and building of community. Okay. So what he's not saying that you need to be poor. Okay. He's saying that every transaction that we make with one another in relationship as human beings might not have to be monetized. Let's say, for example, that you are a gardener and you are growing in your backyard tomatoes. And any of you who have grown tomatoes, you know that a tomato will only last so long. You can, if you have a bumper crop of tomatoes, you can only eat so many tomatoes before you're kind of sick of tomatoes. And yes, you can can some for the winter. That is an important part of this. But one of the other things that you could do if you have a bumper crop of tomatoes is you could give some of them to your neighbor. That is a resource that decays over time, like negative interest currency. That is a resource that needs to move for the abundance of it to be fully appreciated and realized. And you're saying, well, what do I get out of it if I grow tomatoes and I have to give half of them away? Well, what you get out of it is you are creating a reciprocal relationship with your neighbor. Maybe they grow something else. Or maybe in 1 year you have a blight, like in this 7 of Pentacles, that destroys your tomato crop. And you're like, man, did your crop get destroyed by insects this year? And they're like, nope, I got a bumper crop. Here, take a third of it. Because you primed the pump of exchange with your neighbor. You created community. You've created the desire to help one another through your generosity, not through your hoarding. Okay. So I think this is one of the things that Uranus is going to be helping us to try to understand through this eclipse, is that resources multiply through movement, not through stagnation, through movement. Okay. So the other thing that could happen, maybe you don't want tomatoes. Maybe you give your neighbor tomatoes one day and your car doesn't start. And instead of having to call the mechanic, your neighbor has some skills or gifts in that area. And they're like, don't worry about it, I'll fix this. And they help you with that service. This is how we start formulating an exchange and gift economy where we demonetize some of these things. And we're no less wealthy, quote unquote, for it. We have started to realize that every single thing, service, good, etc., does not have to be turned into quantitative money. And that is the radical idea that Uranus and Taurus, I think, trying to come through that, is that every single idea doesn't have to be monetized. Every single thing, resource, capital, doesn't have to be monetized. One example of this is that Charles Eisenstein talks about this in Developing Nations, is that the GDP of a developing nation may look like the people there live on $1 a day. And as Americans or Westerners, we may be horrified. Oh my God, they live on $1 a day. Heaven forbid. Now, some of that is real. Some of that is, there is some real lack on that. But what you're not taking into account with those economics is that not every part of a developing nation has been turned into GDP. It's not measured by money. Those are communities that still help each other. They still share food with one another. They still share services with one another in a gift economy, like indigenous cultures have done for thousands of years. So when we are measuring wealth, we have different measuring tools for that. Now, that doesn't mean that we let Western civilization off the hook for creating a debt cycle for developing nations. That's very exploitive. What we'll do is we'll force regime changes like we just saw in Venezuela. Okay. We will offer that country after we've displaced their leadership. They're sovereignly, in a lot of times, sovereignly elected leaders. Maybe not in Venezuela's case. I don't know enough about that to speak authoritatively on that leadership, but there was some elements of a dictatorship there, I'm sure. But here's what happens. We will displace the government, offer that country a loan to build out of infrastructure to help extract the resources from that country to the Western civilization, and then charge them interest on it. And then the only way that they can finance their debt or pay their interest is through turning whatever they make and selling it to the Western culture, okay, in service of the debt, rather than keeping the money in their community. It's extracting that wealth over and over and over again to the point where they just don't have anything else to exchange with one another, to support one another. And oftentimes what will happen is we will go in. This is another thing I learned in this beautiful book, Economics. What we'll do is we fuck this fucking system. So fucking pissed. I'm sorry. I'm just so fucking angry at this. This is the like righteous indignation that is coming, I think, through how extractive all of this bullshit is. What will happen is that we will put in a type of democracy. I'm trying to look at exactly what the name of it is, but it is a protected democracy. So here's what a protected democracy is. A protected democracy says, we are going to give you a huge loan. We're going to put the leader in place. We're going to fund the dictator that is keeping you in servitude of our interests. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, you can have democracy, but the terms of this loan are basically that you can't change your economic system. If you decide that you want to become more democratically socialistic, you're not allowed to do that. You're only allowed to have elections to change your leaders, but you can't change this economic system. You still have to funnel all your fucking resources out to the Western country. It's so exploitive. That is the spread of democracy in the last century. Protected democracy. Ones where we say, well, you have to maintain our way of doing economics, one that is extractive and only beneficial to the Western country. I'm sorry to get fired up about that, but like, it's terrible. And it's something that we just are so blind to in our everyday lives in American society and culture. And I think people are starting to open their eyes to it and internalize those costs, and I think that this is going to be something where we really start to have to consider this. If we really truly believe in freedom, this is one of the things that everybody in America is saying. Freedom. I want to be free to do all these. I want to be free to buy whatever I want, whenever I want to. That's really what we're saying. I want to be free to like be able to give money to the monopolized corporation that it only gives me one option and then keeps charging me more for it. We can't be free in the truest sense of the word if we're enslaving others to create that freedom. It's just, it doesn't work that way. We've talked also on this channel about the imperialistic boomerang. Eventually, those same type of methods that were utilized to control a developing nation will boomerang back onto the country that is doing the controlling of the developing nation. And that's what you saw in the last few weeks. That's what you saw when you had the ICE folks going into Minnesota and utilizing the same exact techniques that they were using in South American countries, in the Middle East, to control those markets and to squash and repress and dissent. Imperial boomerang. So you should be interested in those topics and that mechanism if you don't want that to happen anywhere. But if you're like, well, that's happening over there, it's not going to happen to me. Au contraire. Like that's the thing. If you only have your own self-interest in mind, it is in your self-interest to care about what happens to other people because it will boomerang back on you. That's the point. Let's see. Ronnie says you don't want any plummeting Bitcoin right now? Buy low. No, I don't. And I've been really considering. There was a time where I was curious about Bitcoin and got kind of caught up in a little bit of the, I don't know. I got a Coinbase account, and I think I maybe put a couple $100 into some Bitcoin type currency, and I haven't touched it for like 6 or 7 years. Not a lot, not anything worth anything. But I'm like, I need to get rid of this. I don't even want to participate in this. Like, I think that I would like to divest in those things as well. So no, I'm not going to be buying plummeting Bitcoin right now. I probably want to sell it soon, but this is probably like shooting myself in the foot, like personally. But this is the thing. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices if we want to make changes within the system. Yeah, we might have to sell the Bitcoin that we bought at a lower price to just get out of the casino that it is completely and not support that type of thing at all. Next November, Bitcoin should be fun. Squash and cukes too. There you go, Rose. Cherry tomatoes will reseed themselves. I love it. Rose says, I used to grind up extra squash and freeze it and then make bread and give it away during the holidays. There you go. I love it. So many ways to share. Sounds like some bullshit, girl. It is. And we're talking about the way that Western countries exploit developing nations. It is very, very frustrating. It is bullshit. And it is something that we need to start talking about a lot more, because the comfort and security that we enjoy is coming at a cost. And that cost is the externalized violence and exploitation of other people in other areas of the world. That's why we can, I think, confidently try to draw more people internationally in with this channel and broadcast, because we need to talk about this stuff. If you're in one of those places, come on here and tell us exactly what the results of that are. You know, like I want to hear from you. I want to hear what life has been like because of imperialistic capitalism. Like, these are the things that we need to parse out and talk about, find a solution for. The alarm bells are ringing. Like, right? All right. Zuck it. I just said bullshit too. There you go. Ani says, plus said country regarding high one change has to use exploitative petrodollar. Maybe say more about that. That sentence is a little bit choppy. Freedom isn't free. Exactly, Rose. Exactly. Sorry, country regime change has to pay us back in our currency, so BRICS is divesting. Yeah. There's so many ways that it opens up corruption. So 100%. So Uranus and Taurus squaring the eclipse in Aquarius. What two forces are actually competing at that point? Okay. Well, Aquarius 3 says, I need to just leave this behind completely. Taurus 3 says, maybe we can fix this. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see where the tension is with this? So in this eclipse, the tension that comes up is, God, we're so frustrated with this. Just burn it all to the ground, right? Uranus and Taurus says, well, hold on a second. Hold on, man. Maybe we can fix this and make the transition a little bit gentler. Maybe we can make this transition a little less violent. Maybe we can make this transition a little smoother. In sacred economics, this is demonstrated by a curve. All right. So on page, they're talking about steady state and degrowth economics. He has four curves. First curve shows how we think about our economic system right now, an exponential up curve. The second one here shows what a lot of people think might happen is we have this tipping point where everything collapses and we go way, way back. Like, we have this huge, like, catastrophic bottoming out. Okay. Well, he's offering a different solution potentially, like the leveling off steady state. right? Where there's one way maybe we could have gotten to a point where eventually our growth levels off and then it becomes into this steady state. Now he's saying that we had an opportunity to do this in the 60s. He's saying we're probably more likely to get to this point right now. This curve shows a leveling off, but a reduction, right? Where we need to reduce the way that we're turning collective commons into money for the health of the planet. But it could be a more, if we start to do these things now, it could be way less destructive. If we preserve the natural gifts and commons and resources now, anything you do to conserve all of those things can help make that transition maybe a little bit less catastrophic. This is why it's important to protect the ice shelves of Greenland, to protect the ocean temperatures and the barrier reefs and all of these things, because every single thing we do can help make the transition maybe less painful. And he's a very smart guy. And I think that there is a mindset of some of these insane billionaire people like Musk that believe in that exponential growth curve all the way up, that says, you know what, once we use up everything on this beautiful planet, we're just going to go and colonize another one and use up its resources. We're just going to move everybody to Mars. Yeah, man. And we're going to take a giant cock and we're going to just get in our giant cocks and go into space and go fuck another planet. That's what it feels like, doesn't it? Well, I'll tell you, it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that this planet has been so generous with us as a species. I think it's our duty and our responsibility to show her some love as a lover, as a mother, as someone who cares about what happens to her rather than just using her up and kicking her aside. What kind of children would we be if we treated our own mothers that way, used them up, kicked them aside when they didn't have any use for them? How do we take care of the people that have been so generous with us over the course of our life? How do we take care of our mothers, fathers, elders? How do we take care of this earth as lover in an equal partnership rather than one that just takes and takes and takes and then just kicks it aside when it's used up? How do we get out of the Leonardo DiCaprio model of relationships with the earth, where we're just like, we just use it up, and if it's too old, we're just kick it aside and go get a new planet? Come on. Come on. Right? Yeah. Kwa says, yes, they're all a bunch of floppy dildos. Yes. And that's why, it's interesting to see, like, there was like a dildo, there was something where there was a group of protesters were throwing dildos at ice vehicles in Minnesota. It was awesome. But yeah, how do we get out of that mindset where we just use something up, that there's just something new we can use up? It doesn't have to be that way, right? And this is, I think, the tension between Uranus and Taurus and the Aquarius lunation is, I don't think we necessarily have to burn everything to the ground. I hope not, because that will be so much collateral damage. So much collateral damage. My hope is that there is some sort of awakening where we can start incorporating these more just ways of doing things. There's some things we can preserve, and there's some things that we will have to discard completely. And I think that's the tension with Uranus here, is what can be fixed. This decan talks about the Litai. The daimon, or spirit, in Taurus 3 talks about 8, which is, let's say 8 is the billionaire class that's been the monopoly class that's been stepping on the proletariat class, okay, for decades, centuries, etc., through their rashness, through their greed. Okay, 8 was a demon that stepped on the heads of humanity and created ruin. Now the Litai came behind and offered up repentant prayers. They were these hobbled old women, these elders that offered up repentant prayer after the destruction of 8. How can we be the embodiment and the manifestation of the Litai, following behind this wake of destruction, saying, how do we create sacredness and a sacred relationship to our economics, to our monetary systems, to our earth, a sacred relationship? And I think it comes through asking these types of questions. I think it's coming through saying, well, we don't necessarily want to completely burn and raze the entire planet to the ground, but we do need to really take an enormously hard look at how we are organizing the way that we're doing business. Okay. Devin says Haiti had to pay France for its freedom. Exactly. This is another example in this book. Then the U.S. bought that debt, so now Haiti owes us. Perfect. Here's another realization, Devin, that was just blowing my mind. World War I. World War I was the stupidest war probably ever. We had Germany and Britain and France going at it for, I don't even know if they really know the real reasons at this point. Okay. They did an enormous amount of destruction, much of which was funded by United States military industrial complex. Okay. So this is nothing new. We funded much of France and Britain's weaponry in World War I. When we started to see them not having the success, we were like, well, we got to get involved to protect our investment, right? Okay, to protect the debt that we just gave them for these weapons. Okay. At the end of World War I, when both sides were just like, we're exhausted, everyone's dead, this is pointless, let's quit, they did something called the Treaty of Versailles. And in the Treaty of Versailles, France and Britain said, hey, Germany, we know that we've all just destroyed each other's shit, but you owe us the cost of this war. We're not gonna let you rebuild your country. You're gonna owe us the cost of rebuilding our country, and we're not going to allow you to have trade routes to actually finance and fund that and repay that debt. Okay, which is crazy. And the United States could have done the amazing thing here. They could have said, you know, France and England, we forgive your debt. And what they would have done in that case is they would have prevented potentially the radicalization of Germany, because leading up to World War II, Germany had a 40% unemployment rate. 40%. A lot of this because England and France continued to choke off trade routes so that Germany couldn't repair their economy. And Germany and France said, well, you're going to have to pay for the cost of this war. But it was the United States that perpetuated that by not forgiving those debts. We could have prevented World War II, because I truly believe this. Because what happened was, when people get so desperate, and you see this happening now too, in America on some level, people on the MAGA movement, they're mostly poor rural folks that are desperate because they've been abused by an oligarch system for a long time. And what happened in Germany is they started to do irrational things. They started scapegoating. They scapegoated, millions of Jews. They were scapegoating, anyone else that didn't agree with their policies. They were using irrational means to deal with an economic problem, and it made them vulnerable to someone like Hitler. And now we've done the same thing in America. We've done the same exact thing. We've repressed the working class to the point where they've become vulnerable to doing irrational things that aren't even in their best interest, and that are scapegoating the people that are in an even more vulnerable position. So if you've been thinking through this whole time, what does economics have to do with any of this? Well, maybe if you have some economic education, you could help prevent the next world war, potentially. These are the types of things we need to think about with Uranus and Taurus as a part of this conversation. How can we fix this? It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to keep talking about these things. Ani says, LOL, space dicks. That's always been so ironic to me. That's just so right on the nose, right? Let's take this super young, dominating type of energy with billionaires where we they literally will just make a dick to go into space and just, you know, try to fuck something, fuck up a new planet. You know, it's crazy how on the nose it is. Yeah, tribalism, Rose says, grr. Yeah, it's, and we're getting to the point now, and we might not have been able to see the effects on other countries in our infancy of our own country. It may have been more difficult to get that information because of control of media and because of the way that the corporate interests controlled the 3 stations we had on TV or the newspapers, etc. But we don't have that excuse now. We can see with our eyes every single day the destruction that it is rotting on places that we don't live. This is the big change with the internet, is we don't have an excuse anymore, right? No excuse anymore. We have to see it. We have to reckon with it. Devin says, do your sources mention the Knights Templar and their role in banking? They didn't. Like, which is, and that sounds familiar from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and like their role in protecting the Grail, right? But yeah, tell me more, Devin. I'd be curious. Anyway, okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how the week is going to kind of unfold, right? I'm going to show you how we're going to get from point A to point B from one eclipse to the next. Now, the point of an eclipse, in between eclipses, usually we have 2 eclipses. It's called the Bardo period. It's a liminal space. So the initiating energy of this eclipse is going to have some kind of reciprocal energy that will come not only in the full moon lunar eclipse that's going to happen in Pisces and Aquarius, I'm sorry, Pisces and Virgo in March, but it'll also be playing out 6 months down the line when we have an eclipse again in Leo, a full moon eclipse in Leo and Aquarius. And then, you know, there's meta cycles with this too. Eclipses can have effects in, I believe, 18-year cycles as well. So this is just a seed that's being planted. But let's see how it's going to unfold over the next few weeks. Ani says, debt is as old as humanity. Back in ancient Egypt times, they had cyclical jubilee, forgive debt, or the masses would revolt from inequality. Many cuneiform tablets recovered are receipts. Yes, but the point that you're making that's really important is every once in a while they needed a reset with debt forgiveness and wealth redistribution. And that's another thing that's suggested in sacred economics, and something that we need to do every once in a while, you know, because just the servicing of this debt has just destroyed this planet to the point where there's just nothing to extract anymore. You know, we're just cannibalizing ourselves. And what's the point of that? You know, so 3 people can like live in a bunker afraid for their lives. I'm telling you, they're not even happy. The billionaire class isn't even happy. I mean, look at all the depraved things that we're seeing in the news that they're trying to do to just feel something as humans. They're not happy. They're the emptiest vessels on this rock. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's got to be something different. Thank you, Rose. Appreciate it. I'll engage with that in a second. Let's see. Rose says Friday the 13th was considered unlucky, largely due to the arrest of the Knights Templar on October 13th, 1307, which marked the beginning of their downfall. I'll have to do some more research. So Devin is bringing up some things with their banking role. So if Devin has some more information on that, I'd be happy to share that. But let's look at the chart. And here it's big. Okay, I'll be little for this point. Like, I'm probably not going to chop this up into little things anyway. So there you go. You guys win. Devin says also Saturn rules the ultra wealthy, and Pluto is digging that out. There you go. It's exposing the corruption inherent, right? So let's look at Venus conjunct the North Node here. This is, I'm going to put on the outer chart is going to be, let me see if we can still see this vertically. Yeah. I don't know, friends. I still think you could probably see it better on the vertical one if I do it like this. Is it going to really bother you if I keep it like this? Anyway, I digress. So what we're going to see I'll try to narrate it the best I can. If you want to follow along, I'll give you the dates on your own charts. Okay. So what we see here on February 17th is the same day that the eclipse is happening. Venus is coming into alignment with the North Node, conjoining the North Node. Now, it's in aversion to the eclipse, which means that it doesn't have a clear line of sight. But I do think that there is something that we need to look at that's important with that. And I think that understanding that Venus is really strong in the sky gives us something to lean into. Since Saturn is in its fall, creating fair and equitable structures as a collective might not be fully supported with Saturn in Aries. We might have to be patient with that. But what is supported with Venus conjoining the North Node in Pisces is an ability to dissolve the illusionary borders and boundaries that separate us in our collective spiritual humanity. And I do think that being able to see your neighbor as yourself and as part of a collective group that inhabits this planet is very supported with Venus and Pisces conjoining the North Node. I would also say that with the Pisces 1, like, let me show you Pisces 1 here just real quick. So here's Pisces 1, 8 of Cups, leaving something behind. The ability to recognize that pleasure, Venus, it is ephemeral. It is not something that you can always hold on to permanently. There might be some things where we have to learn how to leave behind our old habits. Maybe there's old comforts we're deciding to leave behind to go in search of a more meaningful sense of what is wealth, what is beauty, what is comfort. Okay. This to me is the Pisces 1 revelation, is leaving behind material success, okay, abandoned success, Book T calls it, and going in search of a higher purpose and higher meaning. So the underlying exalted planet, Venus, in all this is saying, if you leave this behind, you can find something that is going to be more meaningful, right? So a lot of the frustration that we're feeling, the revisiting of old patterns, we're leaving it in search of something better, okay? And that to me is so important, because when I'm talking about things like negative interest currency, the demonetizing, degrowth, a lot of you will hear, well, you want to take away my quality of life. Nope. I would like you to have a better quality of life that's based on community, that doesn't have externalized costs that will boomerang back on you eventually. I want to have a sustainable economy. I want to have a sustainable wealth. I want to have a fair wealth that isn't accumulated on the backs of slaves. I mean, that's to me is where Venus and the North Node conjoining can speak towards it, is speaking towards how do we find something that is more equitable? How do we go off in search of meaning? And I think one of the most important things that anyone can do as an individual for this is to examine your own preconceived beliefs about wealth, about comfort, okay? One of the things I've been working hard on is trying to divest from big billionaire companies. It's not the easiest thing to do when there's these monopolies. It feels like you're swimming upstream. You know, like I've felt this way for a long time. Like trying to do the right thing is sometimes made difficult by the system, but you have to try, you know? And I had, like I said, I had a long conversation with my father where he finally was starting to realize, maybe I can get out of my comfort zone a little bit. He's the type of person, he's a Taurus rising. Let's just put it that way. He's a Pisces sun. He cares about people. He really does. He's a kind man. But there has been times in his life where he believed that if he just kept his nose down and didn't challenge anyone, that he would be able to be left alone and in his comfort. And maybe that worked for a portion of his life. but that externalized costs. And I think I finally reached him about the externalization of those costs. We were talking about Amazon. We were talking about the convenience of getting things delivered to his home and how cheap it was and easy it was. And I was like, well, did you think about the externalized cost of the condition of those workers? Did you think about the externalized cost of them having to take a piss in a fucking Coke bottle because they're not allowed breaks? Did you think about the externalized cost of the algorithm completely suppressing competition to the things that they're showing you? Did you think about the price fixing that happened when you make things extraordinarily cheap and by doing it on a mass scale that discourages competition? Did you think about the clause that they have on Amazon that says that if you offer your goods, you can't offer them at a lower price anywhere else, which discourages free market competition? And after I had stopped vomiting all that out, he's like, oh, well, maybe I should think about these things. And so, you know, we all have to dismantle some of the myths that we live our lives around. And I think Pisces 1 can help us to dismantle the mythologies that we accept as our truth. And the more that we can do that, that is a personal responsibility thing. Yes, you may feel like a little bit helpless against some of the grander forces, but one thing you can do today in this moment is to start questioning your sacred cows, right? To start questioning the mythology of how you shape and make your decisions and how you are participating in your role within all of this, because that's how we create change. You have to start with belief first, and this is an opportunity to do so. Let's see. I've got some nice comments coming in. Ani says, this is how commerce expanded and why banks served as a useful function to transact across distance, protect merchants. Now it's turned into a scam pyramid economy that doesn't rebalance the scales. Exactly. Okay. Yes, I agree. Chad is here. What's up, Chad? Chad says the Knights Templar role was in the Crusades was if you were a crusader, you could make a deposit in Western Europe and have access to your money in the Middle East. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. That sounds kind of exploitive, right? Yeah, it sounds like maybe a challenge, but I don't know. They were shown as heroes in our media, right? So maybe we have to question that regard of that part of it. They were shown as protectors of something sacred within, like, Indiana Jones, for example. So question your mythologies. I made it full screen, yes. Devin says they started as a way for pilgrims to travel safely, but eventually became a storehouse for people's money. There you go, saying a similar thing. People who had no money were less likely to get robbed. They were given notes that they could use to get some of their wealth out as they traveled. Traveler's checks, there you go. The knights loaned out money and kept amassing wealth and eventually used that in politics and overthrew a kingdom's ruler. Yes, traveler's checks, there you go. We'll get to that in a moment, Rose. So it sounds like there were some positive things that came out of that organization as defenders of the realm, of protectors of the little guy, maybe. I'll have to look into it more. I think there's nuance in so many of these things. Nuance. I think that we need to leave space open for nuance too. Rose says, I cut my cable TV about 10 years ago. Now I have a de-Googled phone. Oh, good. Nice. I'm gonna have to do that too. I've been changing all the privacy settings on all my phones and trying to walk my boomer dad through it too, which is fun. But yeah, it's a process. I mean, being able to unravel some of these knots, it takes a little while. So all of those efforts, I think, are really positive. Okay, so let's go back to the chart and let's move forward. And I'm going to move forward to, let's see. So the sun moves into Pisces on the 18th. So again, here's the sun in Pisces. And this is helping us to put a big focal point on that changing of our mythological narratives. When you start to leave behind something that has supported you and has been providing security, you can find yourself a little bit lost. Austin Coppock calls that Deccan the labyrinth. So there may be some times where we're trying to find our way. It's a little bit confusing. It's not exactly, the path forward isn't clear, but we know that we need to leave behind the old way of doing something. And I have found that when we make a commitment to make change, the path sort of unfolds for us. And by reaching out to others in community and discussing ways forward, there's all sorts of ideas that you can come up as a community. Ani says, Chad is reframing the banking system. He explained the Knights Templar are a newer iteration from the ancients. What's the consensus, chat? Were the Knights Templar an organization that was helpful, or was it exploitative? Can someone kind of contextualize that for me? Because I'm trying to see if they were something that I should revere or criticize. Maybe it's both. We'll see. So the first aspect that the moon is making after the eclipse is a trine with Jupiter. And this is happening at about 15 degrees or so. Yes, 15 degrees. 15 degrees. We have the trine with Jupiter. Now, this to me is generally positive. When we have a first aspect of the moon as it's released from the bond, oftentimes it'll give us an indication whether the unfolding of the seed, the unfurling of the leaves, is a smooth process or one that's a little bit more painful. So the trine with Jupiter seems to suggest that this process of leaving something behind, of trying to fix the things we can and discard the ones that we can't, might be smooth. And one of the things that we're going to try to have to do with the moon at 15 degrees of Pisces, trining Jupiter at 15 degrees Cancer, is think about how we can bring the new vision out of our imaginations and into the real world. We may have to protect those ideas and put them behind the walled garden for a period of time, which is Cancer 2. The other danger that we have with the moon in this position as the first aspect is this decan is notoriously associated with sorcerer's apprentices who try to fly before they're completely ready. So if you are trying to leave something behind and start something new, I would say be patient with it. Let it cook a little bit. You don't necessarily have to reveal every single thing that you're working on. I know that I've kind of broken that rule here today, but I just felt a lot of passion after I didn't have a class on Monday. My Lord of the Rings class was done this past week, and I had a free day, and I just spent all day Monday and Tuesday reading this awesome graphic novel, Economics, and it just brought all sorts of new ideas that I wanted to talk about. And there's some things cooking about how maybe we can turn this into a group class or something of that nature. I'd also like to do the Silmarillion too. I do want to continue on the Tolkien journey if people want to jump on board with that. Ani says they basically debanked and created a version that competed with the king. Ooh, nice. Okay. Devin says, well, the Crusades are basically an attempt to occupy the middle way, the Middle East, the way Israel does now. So that's problem, right? They were murdered for stepping up successfully. So there is two kind of things that we have to unpack with this. This is why nuance is important. So they did help create a new system that was decentralized. So that's maybe a check in the positive. But they also were agents of colonialism and imperialism, which is a problem. So this is why history and issues are nuanced. Sometimes you can have things that are positive about a group, and you have things that are also negative. There's always this nuance that comes through this. So I appreciate all of these perspectives for sure. Ani says, I'm not a scholar. I can't qualify their subjective role in history, but I'm leaning towards good intentions. Yeah, I think, Ani, that is an interesting way of framing things. I think that I think a lot of times in history, people were doing the best that they had with the information that they had at the time. I also would say that sometimes some of the most heinous acts in history were carried out with people who thought they had good intentions, right? So I think it can be both. I don't know enough about the Knights Templar to make a definitive statement of good or bad. Like, that's why I said there's gray area. I think we have to really be careful of like doing that, because there's so much nuance that's involved in some of these historical things. There could be parts of what they did that were very good. There could be parts of what they did that were very problematic and that we need to work through. So yeah, I'm going to hold that space for that nuance. Cosmic Rose says, do today's Freemasons follow in their footsteps somehow? Maybe. I don't know enough about Freemasons to make a statement on that, but other people could comment on that. Okay, so we have that first aspect on the 18th. After that, we have the Sun conjoining Neptune. Now, I did spend quite a bit of time on this last week in the Saturn in Aries talk, and I also did an interview with Melissa LaFara of Energetic Principles. This is why I don't like this, because now what I have here is you can't even see Saturn. I'm going to go back. How about this one? This one? There you go. Just trust me. Saturn and Neptune are coming together right here. Saturn and Neptune conjunction, very important. Two outer, quote unquote, outer planets. One, the outermost in the traditional 7-planet model. Another one, a transpersonal planet in the modern sense of the word. The last time these two planets came together, I believe, was in the late 80s in Capricorn, when the Berlin Wall fell. So we've been talking about themes of something has to dissolve for something new to be created. And I feel that energy in the air. I feel the energy of like, hey, you know what? This exploitive, excessive yang energy needs to dissolve so that we can have a more balanced expression of our collective humanity moving forward. So we are going to be seeing the dissolving of things, potentially the dissolving of the organization of nations. We have a lot of fallout that's been happening from the Epstein files coming out with with countries other than the United States, because for whatever reason we are unwilling to hold accountable the people that are in those files, probably because the people that are in those files are actually in control of the government right now, which is how do we fix that? Your guess is as good as mine. But I do think that there's some reorganization that's happening in the world with this, and that there's also the potential for a desire for salvation through the restructuring of things. And this often happens with Neptune cycles as they begin, where we have this very idealized vision of how we can change something, how we can dissolve old structures. And then by the end of it, we see that the idealized thing that we put our energy into has flaws of its own. So I would say just be careful around this period of time of getting so idealistic that you're overlooking some of the realistic ramifications of what your new ideas might be. That's always healthy, I think, in a lot of situations. Ani says, but you know what they say about good intentions? Road to hell. They say, yes, there you go. I don't know. I'm not a scholar. I just hang out with people smarter than me. Well, that's what I'm trying to do here today. And you're a part of that, Ani, so thank you. Okay, so Saturn-Neptune conjunction. If you want a full treatment of that, go back to the Saturn live stream from last week. Go back to the Saturn-Neptune discussion with Energetic Principles and Melissa LaFara. I'm going to keep going. Venus trines Jupiter on the 22nd. This is a kind of nice little respite within all of this. We've got Venus at 15 degrees Pisces, trining Jupiter at 15 Cancer. So I think this is oftentimes Venus will bring us the resources we need to bring something into reality by us becoming open and receptive. It's very yin, and it's extremely yin in this decan of Pisces. So I think that this could be something where we are able to be open to receive inspiration, to be able to start to make that new start. As with any Venus-Jupiter contact, careful not to overdo it. The only danger, I think, with this, or one of the dangers, I guess, with this generally pretty positive trine, you've got two exalted planets trining each other. That's nice. This is overdoing it. So I think that this is a time where we could have really beautiful visions and pleasures, as long as we don't overdo it. I think that this could be a really nice moment, the 22nd on Sunday. So that weekend could be some really powerful manifestations. Rose says, the Freemasons say this: we are grateful for what we have received and want to give back to our community as much as we can in a variety of ways. I like that. That's a nice, that is a good intention. First quarter moon on the 24th. So this is a square between the moon in Gemini and the sun in Pisces. Generally, that decan of Gemini, first decan of Gemini, is related to feeling a little bit paralyzed because of so many options. So I think as we are trying to unravel and leave behind our old beliefs and narratives, we might be a little bit confused at all the new information and options moving forward. So this is really the challenge of like finding, okay, how do we find our way out of this labyrinth? We found our way to the center. We found some meaning. How do we find our way back out? How do we hold on to the thread of Ariadne to guide us back out to the light? And we might need to go slow. We might need to process and digest. And I think that with this first quarter moon, we have to kind of be open to new ideas that come in without making any definitive statements on what the new story is going to be. And that's important because the next day, Mercury, well, 2 days, Mercury is going to station retrograde, 22 degrees of Pisces on the 26th of February. We have a Venus-Mercury conjunction formulating around that period of time. This one's fascinating to me because generally Mercury has some trouble. It is doubly debilitated in the traditional sense in Pisces, with Mercury being both in exile and fall in Pisces. Because Mercury has a lot of rational qualities and linear qualities, categorical qualities, but in Pisces they all merge and blend together. So this quality of nonlinear thinking, this quality of not saying what we mean, or having difficulty saying what we mean. Sometimes we speak better through metaphor, through poetry, through figurative language. I'm really curious, though, about the concept of, in Vedic astrology, of a planet that's in its fall, retrograding, can tend to act like its opposite. Keep this in mind that this works, too, for a planet in its exaltation, retrograding, acting in its fall. So test that out over the next few weeks. Maybe there's something where if you have a retrograde Mercury in Pisces, there will be a heightened ability to make exchanges, a heightened ability to say what you mean. I think the last time this happened was last spring. I remember this time, my partner and I were ordering a lot of trees. We had started to think about changing our backyard and restoring the habitat and making a food forest. We were trying to order native trees and bushes to make it kind of a habitat, not just like agriculture, but one that was sharing with the animals and birds and things of that nature. And we had a lot of exchanges. Some of those exchanges, we made a lot of decisions. Some of them were delayed, like some shipments were delayed of trees, and like some arrived dead. And some we had too much. I think that the danger that we fell victim to was doing too many things, being too idealistic. So if I'm going to learn something from that, I would say that, yes, there's a lot of decisions and exchanges that you can make during that time, but maybe try to keep it within a reasonable scale and realize that some things may have to be redone with that Mercury retrograde period. But I'm really curious as if there's an expression that leads to some kind of exalted energy within that. Rose says, good time to dream and create. Write it down. I love it. Absolutely. On the 27th, the sun conjoins the North Node, right, in the first decan of Pisces. Similar themes to when we were talking about Venus conjoining the North Node, but there's a little bit of a different flavor. Venus can speak towards the things that we desire. The sun is more about, I think, an awareness, a spotlight, really showing the light on our stories rather than our desires. I'm trying to reframe the sun as a vehicle for generosity, because it is a planet that was, or a star, I should say, that was worshipped in indigenous cultures as the source of life. It is the source of all life on this planet, and it gives infinitely and generously. So maybe there's a way to recontextualize your generosity story What is it that you have to give? This is something I'd love to do a workshop on, is how do we recontextualize our solar myths and our solar stories and our roles with our suns? Where can we give the most? Where can we create an infinite ability to give and to create vitality in our communities through our sun placement? I think it's a really revolutionary way of thinking about the sun, and I hope that maybe we can continue to discuss it further. The other thing that's happening on that day that's pretty important, Mars is going to be making a square to Uranus from 27 degrees Aquarius to 27 degrees of Taurus. Pretty volatile aspect. I would also offer that this is one that will most definitely include Donald J. Trump, because he has Mars at 26 degrees of Leo. So he will be experiencing a Mars opposition and a Uranus square with his natal Mars. So watch for him in the news. That is, I'm not going to just start to make a conjecture as to what may or may not happen, but often Mars will bring us unexpected severings and separations, unexpected violent events. So keep your eyes peeled on that. He is going to be under the influence of this Mars-Uranus square very deeply. And what that means for us, we'll have to see. I'm crossing my fingers that we steer clear of his attempts to distract from his own corruption. This is the pattern that we see. You have a spotlight on people of power, and then they create some other crisis to distract from that revelation. And I'm pretty nervous, to be honest with you, about that. I don't think we should live in the fearful expectation, but we should definitely know what is going on around this day in particular. What can you do when there's a Mars-Uranus square in the sky? I think it's, first of all, take things slower, have your support systems in place, make sure that you are well rested, well fed, well centered, so that if things do come up that are throwing you off your routine, or if there's things in the collective that come up that are a little bit unsettling, that you are able to respond in a way that is calm and centered, and the actions that you take from that place of preparation might be much more effective than if you just allow the anxiety to build to that point, so that when the event happens, you tense up. Like, think about a car accident that you could see coming. If you tense up your legs, the more it's more likely that you're going to blow your knees out. Okay. But if you go limp, if you get all relaxed, it's like if you're falling off a horse or whatever, you want to go limp. I don't know if I've never fallen off a horse, but I've been in a car accident before. And sometimes we don't have time to do that. Sometimes it's just on us right away. But this is the beauty of astrology. This is like seeing that 3 miles down the road, we're probably going to fall off the horse or run into the car. And if we prepare our minds while we're approaching that to be calm, to be centered, we might be able to survive that better than if we weren't prepared. This is the beauty of pronoia, foresight. KWOW says, it sounds like a fabulous workshop idea. Yeah, I am really into the economic models and astrology, and trying to look at these things through astrological and symbolic lenses. So it's brewing, KWOW. It's brewing. If enough people reach out and say, I'd be really interested in doing that. I was thinking about maybe trying to do it as a pay what you want, maybe a gift economy model to try to test that out. But if that sounds good to you and you want to learn more, let me know. It could be a workshop. It could be a class. A lot of forms it could take. Devin says 26th is the day Hillary Clinton is testifying in Congress. Oh, wow. Wow. What is lighting up in her chart? I haven't looked at her chart with all this, but could be some bombshells with that for sure. Wow. Okay. That's a good piece of information. Yeah, that could really shake some things up. She's a lawyer. They're lawyers. Doesn't mean that we're going to absolve them of like their wrongdoing, but it's going to be interesting. Ani says, I know a living version of fallen Mercury retrograde in a strong house above the ascendant, successful even though they had to overcome obvious impediment. He speaks truth even if controversial with Mars and Pisces. Okay, good. Yeah. We should keep testing that. That's a theory that I've been working with, and I think it's a really fascinating one. Devin says, last year Mercury retrograde was in Aries, but Venus did retrograde from Aries back into Pisces. I feel like there was, are you sure there wasn't a Mars or Mercury retrograde in Pisces last year? I feel like there was but it retrograded back from Aries to Pisces. I feel like there was a point where it was in Pisces retrograde, just a small period of time. Am I remembering this incorrectly? I'll have to figure it out. Devin says 27th is when Bill Clinton is speaking to Congress. Saturn in Aries is a return to his impeachment. Ooh, man, this is getting spicy. The layers. Yeah, that should be must-watch TV. I wonder if Trump's dementia will be exposed. That also a possibility. He seems to be degenerating by the day. We'll see. Ani says, I say he is a good testament of this theory with retrograde Mercury behaving well, transforming his environment in a positive way that well received by his proponents. There you go. Right. Yeah, Scorpio sun. But Hillary Clinton has a Scorpio sun, right? Yeah, interesting. Okay, so Mars, Uranus, just like shocking revelations, potentially, definitely just lighting Trump's chart up. I haven't looked at the Clintons' charts with this yet, but we can look at that and I can check back in with you. But really good context for that with the Clintons, testifying. That could really be a major shakeup with the current administration and revelations that will hopefully bring justice. Venus is going to conjoin Mercury retrograde on the 28th. Okay, so this is a coming together with Venus and Mercury here. We talked about this in the astrology of February, but potentially smoothing over of messages, the potential for reviewing our ability to make sacrifices. This decan of Pisces is a lot related to understanding the sacrifices that we have to make. So we may have an understanding of how we communicate the sacrifices that we need to make and how to bring people together through sacrifice. There was a Mercury, there was as well a Mercury in Pisces, one on a plane. Oh, okay. Nice. Okay. Last two things here. Mars moves into Pisces on March the 2nd. March the 2nd. There we go. Here's March the 2nd. Mars moving into Pisces. So we got this big stack up. Mars, Sun, Mercury retrograde, Venus, all in Pisces. A lot of water after we've been dealing with a lot of air. So just a lot of emotional energy that's coming. Now remember how when planets are traveling together in this big stellium, it's interesting to see how the story unfolds. A lot of times we had Mercury going first, asking questions. Then we would have either Venus or the Sun afterwards, depending on which one was moving faster, bringing revelations, harmonizing, and then Mars would come and like sever and separate, take action on those revelations. I think that the story that we'll have with these planets moving through Pisces and helping us to understand and unravel our old stories and narratives, first we have to revisit them, we have to question them, we have to shine a light on them. And then with Mars, we need to kind of remove some of them. We need to let go of some of those old narratives, let go of some of those old ways of doing things. And it might not be linear. The letting go process, the severing and separating process might not be clear. We might have to cut off one Hydra head over here and another one over here sprouts up. And there might be a non-linear way that we're utilizing that martial energy to help us move forward. And that might be true in your personal life too, where you're having to eliminate multiple contextual narratives that you're trying to perpetuate in your life. And that's going to lead to the full moon lunar eclipse on the 3rd. So here's the next lunar eclipse here. Okay, so this is the opposition between the Sun in Pisces and the Moon in Virgo. It's a South Node eclipse. The Moon will be conjoining the South Node in Virgo. So potentially letting go of form, a releasing of the way something had to be done to be able to bring in the solar quality of being able to bring a dream into manifestation. How do we let go of the method that we're attached to? Sometimes when we get clear about our dream, we realize like, oh, we've been doing things a certain way because we believed this certain thing. When we get to this eclipse, when we get clear about our beliefs, it may show us that a different method may be the way to get closer to our purpose. So I think this is what this eclipse is going to be about. But we'll talk about it in a future live stream. All right, friends. I'm going to check back in on the chat here, and then we're going to do an I-Ching and an animal, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Let's see. Ani says, I was revolving my traveling around Mercury retrograde eclipse in early 2025. Oh, you're traveling. That's an interesting Mercury retrograde experience, right? Having to deal with all of it and all of the delays potentially. Cosmic Rose says, stock up on popcorn. I would say that sometimes I wish there were less popcorn-worthy events happening. But those are not the times that we are living in. These are times where we need to pay attention and we need to utilize that information to start making changes so that we can live in a more just and fair world. Okay, so let's look at this hexagram. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. I draw these and I'm like, haha, universe. This one's 51. Shock. Okay, so here is hexagram 51. Translates to shock. Okay, there we go. It's changing to hexagram 17, following. Now, this is the most Uranian of hexagrams, in my opinion. Okay, so it translates to thunder, shake, quake, upheaval, the arousal, reassessing your life, shocking you out of your lethargy, hidden potential and sudden change, blessings in disguise, taking action. All right. Something unexpected has shaken you. The judgment says shock, success. Thunder comes, crack, crack. Afterwards, there is laughter and talk. Ha ha. The shock terrifies for hundreds of miles, but he does not let the sacrificial spoon and chalice fall. This is about maintaining your composure during these shocking events, in my opinion. So something unexpected has shaken you. You had not prepared for it. Suddenly, your life seems in an upheaval. You experience fear and panic, but once your initial reaction subsides, you will recognize that the sudden turn of events was for the best. You have been caught by surprise, but if you hold yourself properly, something positive can and will emerge from the shakeup. The important thing now is to stay calm and keep your wits about you. Keep your wits about you. I've got to keep my wits about me as I'm realizing something in real time. One moment. Can you bring me my animal book? I forgot to bring my animal book in here. Okay. I continue. The important thing now is to stay calm and to keep your wits about you. Take a closer look at the situation. It is possible that you have simply taken on too much. The shocking event may be a blessing in disguise. It gives you an opportunity to reassess your priorities and lessen some of your burdens. Perhaps you have drifted into an unsatisfying and unrewarding routine. The shocking event can awaken you from your lethargy and force you to change your plans. The disruption of everyday life can invigorate you and even give you a fresh outlook on life. It's like being splashed with cold water. It's unpleasant at first, but it stimulates the senses. After the shakeup, you suddenly see new possibilities. Although change may be disturbing in the beginning, maintain your poise and approach the new situation with an open mind. You will come out of this series of events stronger, better, and happier. The Book of Changes compares the situation you now face to thunder pealing while a person is performing a sacred ritual. Thank you, friend. The shock comes just as a person is ladling out the sacramental wine. But he is so imbued with seriousness and a sense of purpose that he does not spill a drop. In the same way, you should consider the change as a test of your character. If you can maintain equanimity and composure in the face of outside upheaval, you are secure against whatever life can throw against you, and you will always be able to spot the new potential in changed conditions. That is because shock not only shakes you up, but also shakes up the world outside of you. New possibilities are created out of the shards of the old. This is a key idea in the Book of Changes. Change, even sudden and startling change, is not only a hazard, but an opportunity. People who let shocking events dictate their inner life will be disabled and mired in confusion. They are like people who are struck by lightning, Uranus. But people who maintain balance in their inner life are quickly able to restore balance in their relations with the outside world. They can rise to the challenge and improve their lives in the process. So there is one changing line here. So he says, shock, coming and going. This is the line at the 5th place. Danger, but it does not mean loss. There are things to do. Life seems to be conspiring against you. You face one blow after another. Repeated shocks leave you breathless, but all is not lost. Stay calm. Maintain your emotional balance and your composure. Do not abandon your values. You will have to adjust to new circumstances, but as long as you remain centered, you will be able to handle whatever life throws at you. In the long run, your efforts will pay off and you will lose nothing. The lesson of this line is that those who lack emotional integrity will be thrown about like driftwood in a storm at sea. But those who keep their balance will roll with the tides and eventually come out on top. Keep your composure, friends. Important. This is changing to hexagram number 17, following. Allegiance, loyalty, hunting, pursuits, adaptability, being adaptable. This hexagram concerns the obligations of followers and leaders, how to get others to follow you and when to and how to follow others. If you want others to follow you, you must know how to adjust yourself to them. In the words of the old Chinese proverb, to rule is to serve. No one can be a true leader who does not have sympathy for those in one's charge. You must adapt yourself to the demands of the time and the needs of your supporters. Then you will gain the respect and trust so that they will follow you with joy and gladness. If you try to gain mastery over other people through force and fraud, and through conspiracy and connivance, you will poison social relations and breed resentment and resistance. At most, you will gain control of only a faction that must suppress its opponents. You'll only gain control of a faction that must suppress its opponents. If you win power through injuring others, you will have to keep injuring them to maintain your base. That sounds familiar as what we're going through right now. The injuries you do to others will not fade away. They will haunt you later on. Imperial boomerang. On the other hand, if you gain power through winning the trust and affection of others, they will give you the benefit of the doubt when you must make tough decisions that you feel are in the best interest of all. When your leadership is established on trust rather than fear, you maintain the base of support by continuing to work on behalf of those who follow you. They in turn will support your endeavors, and in this way, everyone will benefit. I love that, okay? So try to lead through showing people the benefits rather than through the strong arm, okay? Especially with Saturn moving into Aries, we might be more inclined to use a strong arm, but that might eventually boomerang on us as well. Now, the animal I got for you, and thanks to my beautiful partner who brought me my book that I've forgotten to read out of, I got the chickadee for all of us here today. Tanya to the rescue. Exactly. Exactly. Tanya to the rescue. So here is the chickadee. Let's talk about it. Yeah, let's see here. Rose says, I'd rather have popcorn than escape through drinking. Yeah, there you go. Making better choices. Can Dumpy maintain or sundown all day? We'll have to see. Tanya to the rescue. Thank you, Tanya. Yes. Okay, let's talk about chickadee. Chickadee symbolizes adaptability. Very similar to our hexagram number 17, adaptability and following. This tiny bird can lower its metabolism in order to survive in frigid winter. It doesn't migrate and often makes friends with other small bird species. When foraging for food, it will often hang upside down. This is a very social animal with extreme curiosity and fearlessness. It is very interested in people and will often land in someone's hand. If you put out a bird feeder, chickadee will be the first to find it. It has talents for the ability to influence people, to be accepting, adaptable, agreeable, It attracts people easily. It's brutally honest and can take care of itself if challenged. Cheerful, communication skills, curious. Don't worry or let other things get them down. Easygoing, friendly, happiness, intelligent, interaction, joy. This bird is amazing. It is like a little helicopter in the sky. It can go in all sorts of different directions. It's very confident. It will be the first to visit your bird feeder. There's some places in Michigan where the birds have been a little bit domesticated, and these birds will be the first to eat out of your hand if you have seed. There's a place called Kensington Metro Park that we visit where the birds are very tame, and these little chickadees will come and like eat from your hand. It's pretty cool. They have challenges around being anxious, blunt, commit anxiety, crying wolf, indiscriminate, inefficient, overly dependent on others, overly opinionated, tactless, too obsessed with being popular, underestimated with others. These are symbolic relationships. Chickadee means that you will need to be aware of the people around you. It can warn you that someone isn't being honest and reminds you to always tell the truth no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel. Chickadee influences personal and business relationships and is a clear sign to communicate effectively, to be diplomatic, and to refrain from getting into a conflict. Chickadee means that now is the time to be open and excited about ideas, projects, and proposals, and the people in your personal life. Now is not the time for secrets, but to open up to creativity and your true feelings. Chickadee's song is unique and once heard is easily remembered. It means that you too can be vocally expressive as Chickadee and as hard to forget. It assists you when you're feeling down about yourself, if your self-esteem is low, or if you're being overly critical about what you've been able to accomplish in your life. Chickadee can help you overcome all of these things and see the brightness within them. You are more than you think, and Chickadee can help you become more accepting of yourself, flaws and all. If you're having a hard time fitting into a new environment or making friends, Chickadee can give you the courage to be more outgoing and increase your social circle. Is someone bothering you? Ask Chickadee for help. The small bird will fiercely attack much larger birds if it feels threatened. It protects others in the flock and its young in the same manner. Chickadee is very intelligent. It can help you with studying tests, decision-making, and oral presentations. Chickadee enhances your musical talents. Its energy sounds like its song. It is light and airy. It has a light and airy chirp that seems to resonate in the wind. Its energy feels vibrant and alive, as if it's tickling and then bouncing off of you. It has a happy, joyous feeling of love. There you go, friends. A little beautiful bird, a very communicative bird. Remember to communicate. Remember to be adaptable and flexible. Remember to be a little bit bold and confident and get yourself out there. You know, this is an important time to speak up in service of the collective. I really do. I don't know if you've all been noticing, but I've been attempting to speak out more about my true feelings about things and not avoid controversial topics and difficult things. And I think that we all need to start doing that and get outside of our comfort zone so that we can speak truth to power, but not just to call out the negative things that we see in the world, but to start sharing our ability to visualize what comes after, right? How do we co-create something beautiful together? And to do so, you need to talk about it. You need to think about it. You need to research it. You need to try something new. And this, I think this animal can really help us with this too. All right, my friends. That's what I've got for you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Ani says, ancestral wounds never forget. Rose says, chickadee-dee-dee. Yep, that's their sound. That's a good one. That's their song. I loved watching them with doing nature photography, Rose says. They love to tease the wolves waking up late. Foxes too. I love it. Rose says, key phrase among us, D. Yes. Okay. So, friends, do me a huge favor. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for your sustained attention, for your ability to participate and to stick with something over time. That's so rare, and I feel so honored to have you folks that come each week and share this time with me. It means a lot to me. So thank you so much for that. Go follow me on social media at Spencer Michaud, Instagram, Blue Sky, etc. You can find me at spencermichaud.com if you'd like to reach out for a reading, or if you'd like to find my webinar materials. Also, I did webinars with my partner, Tanya Andrews. You can find her over at Third Coast Mojo. She has all sorts of cool stuff over there on Etsy. Please support her as well. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you today. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a great eclipse season. We'll keep unpacking this as we go along. Maintain your composure. do all your self-care, try to stay calm with all the changes, but be open and flexible to change, and re-examine your own stories as well. The things that you hold sacred, the comfort zones, it's okay to get a little bit outside of it. It's going to be important and almost necessary to do so moving forward. So that's what I've got for you. Be kind to yourself through these changes. Be kind to one another. Thank you so much, KWOW, for the super chat. Appreciate you at the end here. Thank you so much for your support. But be kind to one another. I know that we got to call out the corruption, but we can be kind to our neighbors. We can be kind to our community members. And that's going to be so important as we move forward away from this toxic masculinity, this toxic yang energy, and into something more balanced. We've got to create those relationships and be open to that and accept people into our lives as well. So I hope that you'll do so. Thank you for accepting me into your life, and we'll see you the next time. Appreciate you. All right, friends. Take care. Peace.